challenged the order, and the case will be determined today morning. But the chairperson said that the commission will continue with the registration process until further advised. IEBC had asked for 4 billion shillings to conduct the process but received 1.2 billion shillings. Secondary schools will go on a midterm break from the 19th to the 23rd of this month. Education PS Julius John said all principals should ensure that the students go for the half-term break. This is a change from the initial term dates, which indicated that they'd open on October 11th to December 23rd without having a midterm break. They thereafter go on a 10-day holiday from Christmas Eve until January 2nd next year, then resume for that term from January 3rd to March 4th, 2022. The recent change of plan is thought to be a move aimed at handling the assault cases being witnessed in schools. This, as Kupet chairperson Mboko Milemba said, the midterm break is essential for students who he feels have been overworked due to a short holiday break and a new academic term without a break. He said this would allow them to rest, especially where extracurricular activities that allow them to relax from books had been banned. He further said that the government should make plans to do away with boarding schools.
The long-term measure, like we have always said as Kupet, is to as much as possible do away with the boarding schools. Why are schools banning the dormitories? You did not hear that they banned the class of laboratory, or they banned the dormitory everywhere. So the problem in the house is the boarding schools. And I think moving forward, it's high time the Ministry of Education beat the bullet and we do away with the boarding schools so that our students can go to school and go back home. So that care of the students is in charge of both the teachers, the community, the government, and the parents.
Meanwhile, 24 students from Kanjuri and Kariatheni high schools in Nyeri County have been charged with malicious damage to property, preparing to commit a felony, and being in possession of bank. This is after Karatina Principal Magistrate Karen Jalale rejected an application by the State Council to have the charges facing the students deferred for 2 weeks to allow the prosecution to peruse the files and make a decision on time. The students, most of whom were underage, were charged with destroying a transformer worth 1.1 million shillings at the school. All the students who pleaded not guilty were released on a free bond, with their parents and guardians directed to deposit a copy of their ID cards and mobile phone numbers. The case will be heard next month. The Commission on Revenue Allocation has recommended that counties receive 370 billion shillings in the next financial year, dashing hopes of governors to net an additional 381 billion shillings. The Jane Kiringai-led Commission has further allocated 1.76 trillion shillings for the national government and 6.8 billion shillings for the Equalization Fund, stemming from a projected revenue of 2.14 trillion shillings. CRS said the allocations were informed by slow economic growth, a constrained fiscal framework, the need to contain public debt, and the need to finance and provide security for the 2022 elections.
At this time, should we borrow more or should we tax more to raise the additional 381 million? And the reason that none of those are a prudent option is if you look at the number there, 2.1 trillion, which we are not sure will achieve, and you have 1.7 trillion for the national government, and if from that you remove 500 billion for interest payments, the county government share is 1.7 trillion shillings, out of which 500 billion we use to pay interest. We're saying that the national government is left with 1.2 trillion shillings. We have not paid teachers, we have not paid anyone. So with 1 trillion shillings, we are supposed to learn the rest of government.
Now, Chief Justice Martha Koome said that all courts countrywide will resume normal physical working hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is in line with reduced cases of COVID-19 in the country, which prompted President Uhuru Kenyatta to lift the curfew and relax other containment measures during his Mashujaa Day address. According to CJ Koome, however, court stations shall still be required to ensure strict adherence to the coronavirus mitigation guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health. Now, officials in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa have called on residents to register their weapons and get ready to protect their neighborhoods amid fears that rebels could advance on the city. The appeal came days after the Tigray People's Liberation Front said it had captured 2 cities about 400 kilometers from Addis Ababa. The federal government has declared a nationwide state of emergency. The U.S. has urged the rebels not to try and take Addis Ababa. The capital has a population of more than 5 million. This is Newswire. Dennis Aseto.
If I'm found guilty, there is no problem. I'm willing to serve. I have no problem. Jails are meant for human beings.
They say a society gets the leadership it deserves. If you have a corrupt, crooked and rotten society like we have in Kenya, then of course they will get that kind of a leadership.
I think the president should dissolve parliament. That's the best solution at this moment in time. Dissolve parliament.
All of you go home.
Yes, we all go home.
How are we encouraging other people who might have new and creative ideas? Young people who are making money without any government help. They are just buying their own bundles. They are going on TikTok and making money. KRA is coming after them.
I've been in parliament for 15 years. We have been unable to pass the gender law. And yet no presidential candidate is talking about it now. Because we are fake. The truth is, all the men refuse to vote for that law.
What did Sonko do to Pumwani maternity hospital?
Yeah, he
with
cleaned
his
it up.
own money.
Cleaned it with his own money. That was him as an individual.
Yeah. And I did not say he was cleaning his own money. I was saying he cleaned
Foot, mouth. Foot, mouth. Eric.
Okay.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. SpiceFM. Spice up your life.
All right, so it's not looking too terrible this morning, but if we're going to look at Mombasa Road, in and outbound, right around that Imara Daima area is where we're going to have a bit of a clog up. We're already having a bit of a clog up right now. Looking at industrial area, that is clear and free going in and out of the city. As you get then towards Uhuru Highway, we looking at that South Sea area, and already that has already started to build up right now. It started yesterday with the opening of that one lane. The closure of the other side. So that means that traffic builds up on Uhuru Highway quite early this morning. It's already starting on Langata Road as well as you get towards the city. Bagathi Way looks good. So does Ngong Road. Coming out of the western side of the city, that's particularly Westlands, Mudagari, that whole area, not too bad today at all. A few minutes after 6 o'clock, and it looks like we might be able to get through without too much of a scratch, at least for now. It's building up on the thicker superhighway coming into the city. Let's keep an eye on things this morning as we kick off Wednesday. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch with us this morning. Text on 40127. Let's try and keep things moving today.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Yes, it's 9 minutes after 6. A very good morning to you. How are you doing? Welcome to Wednesday. It's the 3rd day of November 2021. Kenya's biggest conversation begins now. Ndu, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr.
You're
Latiff.
well, aren't you?
I am. Thank you.
Salama kabisa. Hiyo ni mzuri. Siti Muga,
Eric Latiff.
how you doing?
I am doing well.
Yes.
Well, yes to you also.
Good. Yes, yes. Yep, yep.
Yep.
It's yep. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. We will be discussing a number of things today. Well, so what's happening in Ethiopia, our neighboring country? My goodness. So a nationwide state of emergency has been declared. There's this ongoing conflict that began last year, that escalated last year. That's now seeing full-blown war. You know, as we're talking about all these things, all those reports of hundreds of thousands of people having been displaced, crossing over into Ethiopia, into Sudan rather, many trying to get out of the country, many who are hungry and not getting any support. It's really, really, really sad. And what's happening here. Well, that's one of the things that happened yesterday. The other thing that happened yesterday is that the Ministry of Education woke up and they said, okay, so children want to go home.
It's okay. At least those in secondary school.
Let them go home.
Right. Take a weekend. Essentially what's going to happen on the 19th of November until the 21st. Go home. The thing is, it'll be very interesting because there will still be a lot of parents who will not be able to bring their children home for those 3 days, especially if they're in boarding schools far from them. Because it means finishing school on Friday, traveling the next day, and then traveling back the next day to be back in school on Monday. So
the half term is just a weekend.
Yes. It's just a weekend. That's what we're looking at, 19th until the 21st, Abby. Well, according to PS Julius Juan, if I can just read what that communication was just really quickly, is that they will have midterm. All right, so no, it's 4 days. So back in school on Tuesday, out on Friday, back in school Tuesday. So if you were to travel, you travel Saturday, and then travel back maybe Monday, be back in school Monday evening. That's what we're looking at. So 19th until the 23rd is what we're looking at.
Hey, okay.
Talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later, in addition to speaking about the COP26 talks that are taking place in Glasgow, Scotland. Yesterday, President Uhuru Kenyatta, CGH, and Eliud Kipchoge, EGH, were seated side by side. Eliud Kipchoge spoke to the world on climate. Well, we'll have a conversation about what's happening really in these talks. What are they saying? Pledging, and more pledging. When shall we ever see the results? This conversation will take place with somebody from Greenpeace. The head of climate change conversations in Greenpeace Africa will be joining us at 8 o'clock. Keep it here for that and more. So, COVID.
Interesting, the statements that were coming from the Ministry of Health yesterday for looking at what's happening with COVID in the country. COVID-19 has exposed us to the dark underbelly. Okay, let me just start again. COVID-19 has exposed us to the dark underbelly of disparity and the vulnerabilities we face when we surrender key issues as critical as national health care to the custody of others. This was from none other than the CS for Health, Muthui. He was speaking in Italy, Rome, during the Second European Corporate Council on Africa and the Middle East. He said the COVID-19 pandemic has imparted critical lessons to developing nations. And he was talking about the importance of the strengthening of regional supply chains of affordable health products, as well as the prioritization of prevention mechanisms that would safeguard life and overall well-being. So it seems as though he's pushing for preventative care as opposed to curative care, not just when it comes to COVID-19, but other ailments across board. And so he was insisting on this. He says, we are leveraging the richness of our research capacity to engage with global counterparts, developers and manufacturers to strengthen our local capacity to identify, diagnose and adequately treat illnesses. Kenya is eager to attract private institutions willing to collaborate on telemedicine, for example, diagnostics capacity, vaccine and pharma production to increase access to specialized health services and also strengthen the regional supply chain of affordable products. He said Africa and the Middle East must work together first. Not only do they face similar challenges in healthcare and education, but the regions of Africa and the Middle East share a historic and cultural depth. And so, in relation to COVID-19, he's saying, look, guys, this has taught us that we really need to be able to forge ahead with regional partnerships. And he's saying, look, as we continue to fight this pandemic, let's see how best we can work together. Even as he was saying that, the country realized 29 new cases yesterday. Again, day 2 of 0 deaths. We're looking at a positivity rate I'm giving the wrong numbers, 70 new cases, 1 recorded death, positivity rate of 1.2%, and 36 recoveries. We're still just under 9 million vaccines available that have been available in the country. 5,377,727 of those have so far been administered. That leaves about 4 million vaccines available. Uptake is still very low of vaccinations in this country right now. About a month and a half to go, and the goal or the target for the committee was to have 10 million people vaccinated by the end of the year. December 31st is, we're just about 50 days shy of that. I don't know that we're going to be able to vaccinate 5 million people. If this trend is any kind of an indicator, it'll be very interesting to see that 5.5 million people would have been vaccinated by December 31st.
The discussion on vaccinations across the world, mostly in the US, is that now CDC is showing indications that the Pfizer vaccine can be given to children.
And they're encouraging it, yes.
Yes. Children between the ages of 5 and 11. So we are still talking about numbers, vaccinating adults. And what percent are we at? 4, 5, 6?
Well, no, we're not yet at 6. The percentage of people who... Actually, yes, just on the nose. Bang on 6.1% proportion of adults that have been fully vaccinated. So...
It's progress.
It is. To have at least a quarter... to say that to have a quarter of the population vaccinated in 1 year would be great, which is what we're trying to do by December. But look...
what's putting a damper on it, though, is one, the moment you talk about positivity rates going down, the moment you talk about death rates going down, those old narratives about the veracity, the reality, and every other conspiracy theory around COVID now rears its head also. Yes. Anyway.
Time for us to take that break. It's 17 minutes after 6, live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and our website. If you're online, say hello. We can see very many people already online. So let's take a look at the weather forecast, and then we'll be looking at the newspaper and the headlines shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
If I'm found guilty, there is no problem. I'm willing to serve. I have no problem. Jails are meant for human beings.
They say a society gets the leadership it deserves. If you have a corrupt, crooked and rotten society like we have in Kenya, then of course they will get that kind of a leadership.
I think the president should dissolve parliament. That's the best solution at this moment in time. Dissolve parliament.
All of you go home.
Yes, we all go home.
How are we encouraging other people who might have new and creative ideas? Young people who are making money without any government help. They are just buying their own bundles. They are going on TikTok and making money. KRA is coming after them.
I've been in parliament for 15 years. We have been unable to pass the gender law. And yet no presidential candidate is talking about it now. Because we are fake. The truth is, all the men refused to vote for that law.
What did Sonko do to Pumwani Maternity Hospital?
Yeah, he
with
cleaned
his
it up.
own money.
Cleaned it with his own money. That was him as an individual.
Yeah. And I did not say he was cleaning his own money. I was saying he cleaned
Foot, mouth. Foot, mouth. Eric.
Okay.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
We're going to have mostly sunny conditions in Nairobi this morning, currently at 26. That'll be the high today, and lows of 15. Mostly sunny at 26 in Nakuru, highs of 26 and lows of 15 today. 24 and a rainy Nyeri town this morning, highs of 25 and lows of 15. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 24 and lows of 13 today. Mostly cloudy conditions in Mombasa at 30, highs of 31 and lows of 25. Malindi is partly sunny at 30, we'll see highs of 31 and lows of 26. Kisumu at 17 is mostly cloudy, highs of 27 and lows of 17, while Kakamega is cloudy as well at 17, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Out in Kampala at 17 degrees, mostly cloudy, highs of 25 and lows of 17, while Dar es Salaam is cloudy at 30, highs of 31 and lows of 25. Clear conditions at 12 in Johannesburg, highs of 29 today. And Lagos is mostly clear at 24, highs of 32. Looking into Kinshasa, it's 24 and mostly cloudy, highs of 31 and lows of 23. Beijing is sunny at 12, highs of 17 and lows of 4 today. It's a rainy morning in Paris, 8 degrees, highs of 12 and lows of 4, while at 4 degrees, London is clear. We'll see highs of 11, back down to lows of 4. Still Tuesday night in New York, it's 8 degrees, however, and cloudy. Temperatures dropping here as well, highs of 11 and lows of 5.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Okay,
Nairobi.
it's 21 minutes after 6. There are people who are online.
Mika. Yes. Excuse me. Mika Aluda says, good morning, guys. Chris Amolo, I'm loving this family. Okay. All right. Good morning here at Komoroka. I'm locked in as usual to the end. That's Abdikadir Abdallah. Faristo Muganda says good morning as well. And Mosewa Abi tuning from Taveta, Vihiga. And he's asking, Mukwana Kagota, how can I miss the Situation Room? How can you ever? Nixon Otieno says, good morning, good trio. Tune into the best program that makes Kenyans better and proud. Asante Sana. Beda Ashley tuning from Macha. It's been a minute, my dear. Boaz Magangi Gong tuned in this morning each and every day. Mukwana's also asking, so IEBC is done with voter registration?
No.
Have they achieved their target?
No.
Answer to both questions is no. We'll talk about that also in a bit. Court orders or not, we'll see. All right. Mnatoa Kwenaite is tuning from South Africa this morning, and from Kakamega, that's where Samuel Muga is. Good morning from Juja Farm. While the president was away at COP26, the Commonwealth Games Queen's Baton Relay arrived in Nairobi, Kenya, as part of its journey in 72 nations across the world. We are a blessed nation and part of the Commonwealth, okay? Robin Bogo says, good morning, spicing up Mombasa. Odero Jr. says, good morning from the Great Wall of Kino. You're welcome, sir. Charity Mina, Kev Santana. Dorcas Kimotho, good morning. Tuning from Malindi this morning. Watching from Namibia, that's where Alex is. And he says hello to, okay, Otienda Molo, Sifuna, and Akuku Danger. Okay. Right.
Two of them are alive.
Okay. Stella Aya says good morning from Uganda this morning. And Dan Mosiah just tuned in. Says good morning to y'all.
Welcome, everybody. So City is taking us on a tour of a Taita community again today.
Final day.
So this one is the Taita, not the Taveta.
No.
Okay.
Taita.
Okay.
You know, though most people refer to the Taita Taveta, not knowing that they're two distinct communities.
Yes.
Very distinct. Okay. Wakusha Mbombe Ikaoka Mawe.
Wakusha Mbombe Ikaoka
Mawe.
Mawe. Is Mbombe Pombe?
No, no, not really.
Yeah. No relation. Wakusha Mbombe Ikaoka Mawe. Sounds very much like a Lingala, this one.
The Mawe bit. See, the Mbido. The Mawe bit. Mawe, that one.
And Ikaoka. Wakusha Mbombe Ikaoka
Something is dry.
Chicken.
Chicken.
This one, I liked it. When I read it, I laughed and laughed and laughed. Okay? You have shaken the water until it has become milk.
So Mawe is milk.
I'm really not sure that the Mawe is the milk.
And Bombe is the water.
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Okay. You have shaken
the water until it has become
milk.
Yes. Most people wonder, why do you shake water?
So what is this? What's this talking about?
Think
you
about
performed
it.
a miracle.
Not really. If you wanted to coagulate milk in a traditional way, you put it in a gourd.
Yeah.
Okay? And you took it through a process of shaking. At the best, it is actually churning. We're calling it shaking. But you added a little something to it to give a little impetus to actually churn. Now that process didn't take a day. It took a couple of days. If you had a grandmother who understood how to do this, it's something you would see. Now, this was a process of actually producing ghee from the milk, or just coagulating it. Okay. However, we all know that you can't do that with water, and water becomes milk. So, what are they trying to tell you?
You've done the impossible.
Actually, this man is an extremely intelligent man. You have exaggerated. So anytime someone exaggerates, I'll tell them, I see you shaking water so that it can become milk.
Kukabombe,
So that ikaoka.
Kakauka me.
Mawe. Okay.
Nice one. So let's look at the headlines. We'll talk about Ethiopia shortly. Now, in fact, just because of who's asking about IEBC? So let me read a statement that was shared by the IEBC in the middle of the night.
It was, Mukwana Kagota.
Mukwana. 7 hours ago, the IEBC released a statement saying on the 1st of November 2021, the High Court sitting in Eldoret issued ex parte orders prohibiting the Commission from closing the national voter registration exercise, which was scheduled to end yesterday, the 2nd day of November 2021. The prohibition was ordered to subsist until the 9th, when the case will be heard inter partes. The Commission properly advised on the legal and operational ramifications of the court order, moved to court to challenge the order yesterday. This case will be heard today at 8 a.m. Meanwhile, the Commission has directed that pending hearing of this case today, the registration process will continue taking place until further advised. Okay? So basically, the IEBC has extended the registration exercise, the ECVR, and they're saying this will continue until we get some clarity coming out of the courts. Remember, there's a voter in Eldoret who went to court and said, Hapana buana. Hapana buana. So the court said, yeah, listen to this man. The IEBC says, but boss, we don't have money. But as they go to court, the registration will continue for a while. What else? What's in the headlines today? As we look at the papers, the Standard e-paper is only 20 shillings daily, and you get access to premium content on the Standard papers, the standardmedia.co.ke, free Sudoku, free crossword puzzle, get access to the archives, and you will be informed.
Okay. It's interesting. I want to look at this one on the back page of The Nation today. Burden of public debt set to hit counties. As though, once they say when it rains, it does what? It pours. Counties will soon feel the pinch of the rising public debt. They've not felt it before. With their equitable share of revenue from the national government targeted for loans repayments in the coming financial year. The Commission of Revenue Allocation has recommended that counties be allocated 370 billion for the financial year 2022-2023, the same amount they received for the current financial year. This is despite the devolved units' rising needs amid falling own resource revenue collection due to COVID-19 containment measures. The CRA recommendation comes 8 months early, as the National Treasury accelerates its preparation of the budget for the financial year 2022-2023 to be passed by Parliament in March 2022 before the House is dissolved in June ahead of the August general election. The KRA expects to collect 2.14 trillion shillings in the next financial year, a 366.4 billion shilling increase that from the 1.756 trillion that it projected to be collected in the current fiscal year. But the Commission says that this additional revenue would be better used servicing Kenya's rising public debt obligations to ease pressure on the exchequer. CRA adds that this will also give the government wiggle room to restructure its spending to finance the elections. Kenya's debt has grown exponentially in recent years, hitting 7.712 trillion in June, while annual debt servicing obligations have risen to 1.7 trillion in the current financial year, nearly a third of the total budget. The debt is expected to hit 8.64 at the end of the current financial year and rise further to 9.4 trillion in 2022-2023. So it's moving on up, folks. And even if AKRA is going to collect more money, where counties thought that they would be able to get a little bit more in their pocket to be able to do something else, with own source revenue dipping significantly.
Why is own source revenue dipping?
Yeah, so that's another issue. So they're not going to get this money from National Treasury, where they thought that they were going to get an increase. And 8 months in advance of when this announcement normally would come, CRA says, look, guys, don't expect any more. What you receive this year is what you're going to get next year. So just don't even think about it.
All right.
So is it time that counties should really focus on this own source revenue. In a devolved system, it would only make sense that in addition to what you're getting from the national coffers, that there's something that you do as a county beyond collection of license fees and things like this in the county. What else is happening to be able to ramp up this income?
Listen, also they need to manage their costs. Data from the Office of the Controller of Budget shows counties have increased their annual spending by 135% in the year to June, up from 169% billion in 2013-2014. Now they are spending 398 billion shillings. In this 7-year period, spending by counties on salaries, wages, travel and operations has more than doubled to 281.9 billion shillings. He's a criminal.
Bangi.
By the way, again on that particular note, the chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation is reported to have said that there are 6 counties, at least 6, who are able to at least fund half of whatever money they need for their functioning.
At least half, eh?
Yes.
So we can count them.
And
Nairobi, Mombasa,
Kiambu,
Kisumu,
Machakos.
You can tell.
They have the means to do that.
Counties within around the larger Nairobi metropolitan region would be able to do this.
They would.
Because this is where bulk of the commercial activity is concentrated.
Actually, it is.
Yes.
But I'm really, really for own source revenue initiatives and creativity. I really believe, because if anything, this devolution system mimics, the closest thing it mimics is the federal system, whereby you split it up into little bits and everybody then, in as much as you get from state government, the federal government rather, then you're able to do something on your own as state government, because Big Brother is not going to give everything that you need. And here you are with resources in terms of humans and also materials. So you should be able to ramp up revenue and
manage your costs.
There is no reason why you will say we're not getting more money from national government. Here we are cash strapped and we are handicapped. It is not
why
possible.
do you have to do travel, operations, wages, salaries rising year on year?
It's because they can.
Because they're expecting money to come from up there.
Yes, it's like the prodigal son who will always know that daddy will give you something.
And they know that that money can go in whichever direction they see fit. A few questions will be asked, and that is just about
There will be justification. It's 27 minutes to 7. Let's take this quick break, take a look at the traffic, and then we look at other headlines in the papers. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu wacha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*1# to read the Standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Yeah! You're listening to Spice.
After 6:30, and we are seeing that it's building up. Yes, on Uhuru Highway, a lot more than it was half an hour ago. Guys, if you're coming in to the city and you're using Uhuru Highway, you're going to get stuck around that South Sea Bellevue turnoff, just because the road is narrower than it normally is. So there's already traffic building up there. What you want to do is use the Southern Bypass. Honestly, it'll take you out into the city much quicker. Please listen to me. The Southern Bypass actually is your friend, and she's been waiting. Please use me to take you there quicker. Okay. Coming off the coming off the Thika Superhighway, also a little bit of traffic in that little nodule past Survey, that square, Muthui Square, going towards the Pangani underpass. That's what you will find some traffic at this morning. Other than that, it doesn't look too bad, especially for now. Folks are just waking up, it would appear. Coming out of Westlands, Muthangari, then going over to Wayaki Way this morning is where some traffic has already started to build up. So coming out of the out of Westlands is where it is. The eastern part of the city looks pretty good this morning, actually. if you then get towards North Airport Road, that whole area, that's where it's also built up some. The Eastern Bypass, there's a thing there this morning. Not quite sure what's going on there. Somebody there, please let us know what the situation might be. But there's a lot of in and outbound traffic today. Let us know what's going on. All right. Apart from that, not too much. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Okay, it's 24 minutes to 7. So, remember there was a story about a person who was impersonating a magistrate in Nakuru.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Now, there's a person who's impersonating a magistrate at the Kericho Law Courts.
It's a thing nowadays, eh?
Okay.
It's like,
A man impersonated a judicial officer and received 181,000 shillings, a Kericho court has heard. The prosecution claims that between December last year and April 16th this year, Victor Kiprono Ngeno presented himself to Emi Chalangat Kiprotich as Bernard Rugut, a magistrate at the Kericho Law Courts. Ngeno, who appeared before Kericho Senior Principal Magistrate Elvis Makori on Monday, denied 4 counts related to fraud and forgery. The prosecution says the suspect pretended to the complainants that he would assist her 2 children to be employed as court clerks. The state has lined up 5 witnesses, but requested that Ngeno be taken to the Eldoret Law Courts to answer to more fraud and impersonation charges in where? Eldoret. The court declined his bail application and directed that he be transferred to Eldoret, where a case filed this year has been opened. Depending on the outcome, the bond in this matter ought to be held. Meanwhile, the suspect will be held at Kericho Police Station for onward transmission to Eldoret Police Station. The matter will be mentioned in November 23rd. Last week, Ngeno denied 8 counts of fraudulently obtaining 3.26 million shillings. He appeared alongside his wife, Mercy Chepkirui, before the Nakuru Principal Magistrate, Isaac Korenge. This is the same man.
I have a question.
It's the same man.
The same man from Nakuru.
Nakuru guy has a case in Kericho, has a case in Eldoret.
But who is he convincing that he can help them as a magistrate?
Innocent people.
This is a thing, man.
Why
Because
are you laughing?
willing buyer, willing seller, right? The people who have come to him in the past until it has turned out to be a thing have... there's something that he's telling them, obviously, that they're buying. Isn't it? There is some information that he's giving them that is helping them, at least until some point. And it seems...
Believable.
And watertight, airtight.
Do you know how it is that conmen achieve their intended purpose?
They inject an element of truth.
At the right place,
Yes,
at the right
at the
time,
right
but
time.
also the people who are conned are accomplices. Because if you're not inclined towards easy gain, if you're not inclined towards greed, it's almost impossible to be conned. Because you will simply say, no, I'm not really interested. Cons have this promise of something unusual and in abundance, which will solve all the problems you have. Nothing works like that.
But it's also realistic.
What is
Look at the
realistic
case
about
in
it?
Nakuru,
It's not
for
so
example.
far from possible.
Look at the case in Nakuru. The case in Nakuru is somebody who has a case in court and it's taking long.
Yes.
And then, and this is where I bring in my angle, the people with whom this Ngeno is allegedly working approach the person who has a case in court and say, you know what, this issue can be sorted if you actually deal with the magistrate. So there's a link. You have a need and it's direct. And then the people that you're meeting with, you can clearly see that they have a connection with the system. And the person that they introduce you to, you can see that, okay, because CT has told me that Ndu is a magistrate and I have seen CT in court many times when I've gone there, or I've been dealing with CT in court, I believe what CT is telling me. That Ndu is a magistrate. And if I sort out Ndu, my case is sorted. Or someone says that, because I've been told that this so-and-so is a brother to a cabinet secretary, and there are things that will show you, there is a possibility. You have children who need employment. You'll be given a story here that, in fact, remember so-and-so, the kids. Now, see, they're working at Pipeline. So-and-so, the kids. See, they're working at... This is all energy ministry. And this is the guy. He has connections with his brother. Look at this particular case in Kericho. 2 children to be employed as court clerks. You have kids at home. They're looking for work. Someone comes and tells you, by the way, you guys, I know someone who has connections in the courts. Who? Guy's a magistrate. Ah, really? Yeah. Can we meet him? Yeah. Go and meet. And he looks the part. He talks the part. Bring your papers.
Not in a hurry.
Come tomorrow. In fact, come meet me in my chambers. You will find in these particular cases, when they actually unfold, there's greater detail. It tells you it's a network.
It is a network. The point I was making was that those who are conned have a certain willingness. Yes, you have a problem, you want it solved, but there's a way in which you want it solved.
Yeah. So you're not averse to spending a shilling to have your children employed. Kind of thing.
Yes, you're not averse to a shortcut.
Right.
Yes. Who is in this country?
My point exactly. My point exactly. If you're already inclined in that direction, it is very easy for you to be lured. It's like remember the complaints about people who are given money for their children, relatives to be employed in the military?
Yep.
It's something you hear all the time.
Yep.
So it's not easy to... So what you're saying is that it's not easy for somebody who is not that way inclined then to be conned.
They will simply decline. But, as Eric correctly puts it, who in this country is not
How
that
many
way
cases
inclined?
do we hear? So police recruitment, we hear of issues. Military recruitment, we hear of issues, right?
Yes.
The other time, DCI arrested a senior prisons officer. What were the allegations against that senior prison officer? Running a racket that is allegedly employing people to all these places and asking for certificates. DCI paraded on Twitter the number of certificates that they found in this woman's office or wherever the operations were. I can get you employed at the Kenya Airports Authority. I can get you employed at whatever organization, the Kenya Ports Authority, the Kenya Pipeline, wherever. And people are looking for opportunities, man.
I am not. In fact, there are examples galore. I'm in agreement with you. Whenever we have our nominations in political parties, it isn't strange to find that 2 or 3 people have certificates for that same nomination, whereas we know it's only one person who ought to have the certificate.
Yes.
So it's not something that we consider strange in this country. Yes.
And it's because you have a way of believing. I mean, you don't do it once, you see it happen elsewhere. And you're like, okay. If as I hear, these people paid some money to get this done, then I think the only other option that's left for me is...
To do the same?
To do the same. Do one more story before we take a break. CT.
There's an article on page 12 of the Business Daily, and it's also on page 7 of the Standard. I like the headline. Both headlines.
No, you're moving the mic away.
Thank you.
Okay. Now that works better.
In the Standard, stop killing local firms, judge tells taxman. That is the headline.
Sweet.
Lovely, eh? Okay. Business Daily. Court orders taxman to reopen Nanyuki Brewer. Why was it shut? KRA said these fellows didn't have the meter that is recognized as the correct meter for measuring the amount of beer that it produces. Okay, that was number one. And then they're also using counterfeit stamps. Okay, these are the ones used for taxation purposes. Right. Now, according to the judgment by Justice Weldon Korir, he's saying, yes, the raid, we understand, it was a good thing that you did. However, this is a major taxpayer. So long as it remains shut, yes, what do you think you're doing? So please, do what you need to do, get your money back, let that brewery reopen and let them do their business so that life can continue.
So basically, KRA raided this premise, went and allegedly found the fake stamps, allegedly found
Yes,
some meter that is not
allegedly.
And then they said fungai kitu.
Exactly. What the article on the Standard is saying that KRA is actually killing enterprises in the name of taxing or raising taxes. They are killing businesses and saying you must stop this. You are not doing your job. You are killing businesses. This is not tax collection anymore. So
you'd imagine that KRA would know this. Huh?
You'd imagine.
No. I think what then ends up killing the businesses is an extortion racket that individuals who work within KRA have been accused of. Some are even in court over such matters as we speak, where they have the power to shut you down and they're waiting for you to speak so that they can reopen. It's not that they do not know they can open it.
Yeah.
No. It is the business enterprise that every Kenyan in a position of authority has. If you can extort, you want to extort.
Close you down,
Yes.
shut you down first.
Yes.
Raises now
Yes.
the leverage.
Yes. Essentially, they're trading in a great deal of discomfort. We are going to inconvenience the living daylights out of you unless you fork out money.
But you'd think that you want to feed this thing and allow it to thrive so that you could get more from it. I mean,
What makes you think that people who are given to thievery have long memories and that they
But
consider
okay,
the
City.
future?
So
Yes.
there are two things here. There's the institution and there's the individuals. Right? So the individuals can come and harass you left, right, and center.
Yes.
But then the institution, knowing and understanding its mandate, our mandate here is to collect tax. Right? Their policies would be helping the this company, this organization, be able to pay.
remain
Is that not what they keep telling us
To
when
be
we talk to them?
sustainable.
Is that
And
not
that's why
what they say?
I'm drawing the line between. So if the individuals are able to come and say, tutakufunga, but the organization from the very top does not say, no, do not shut anybody down, then it tells you that there is a problem at the very top.
Yes.
It's an institutional problem. It's not actually about the people coming to extort.
Actually,
it is the mindset of the organization from the get-go.
Actually, Eric, the organization is an inanimate object. It's the
Yeah.
individuals who run it, as you correctly put it. Weldon Correa has said that KRA has actually changed their mandate. They become undertakers.
Wow.
Their job is to take you to the grave.
Judge career.
Yes.
Yes. And perform final rites.
Yes.
And now take pride in the last financial year, as we reward the top taxpayers, we also want to pat ourselves in the back for the companies that we shut down.
We killed a few businesses.
Yeah. This business was, paying 2 bob instead of paying 10 bob, so we killed it.
Yeah,
This other business was paying 5 bob instead of paying 13 bob. We killed it.
And these other fellows thought they could joke with us.
We
We
a
showed
track
them.
record of killing sustainable businesses.
Yes.
Right.
And so that people would stop joking with us.
Justice Weldon Career, thank you. Thank you for speaking for Kenyans and small businesses in particular, and even those medium enterprises that are at that level, that verge of just becoming the big ones. 12 minutes to 7. Let's take this quick break. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Wherever you're tuned in, like Nams wa Elisha is in Mogadishu, Somalia. Edward Jennings is in Upper Hill. And everybody else, karibuni sana.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Right, 11 minutes to 7.
Senators want Kenyans stopped from seeking jobs in Saudi Arabia. Stopped. Okay. So, the Senate Committee on Labour and Social Welfare has recommended immediate suspension of migration of domestic workers from Kenya to Gulf countries until their safety is assured. All right? The report has been tabled by Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja yesterday. It came out of a 10-day visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in April to investigate challenges migrant workers face in the Gulf. It is now up for formal approval, and if ratified by the House, it could see Kenyans cut off from a destination that employs close to 500,000 Kenyans. The report seeks to compel the Ministry of Labour to find out the status of Kenyans currently in prisons and deportation centres in Saudi Arabia, such as Malaz Prison and Tarheel Deportation Centre in Riyadh. Labour Minister Simon Chelugui, who will also be required to establish current status of all domestic workers in Saudi Arabia and set up a database including their contacts and places of work. The Senate team says such a database will open a line of communication between the migrant workers and the labour offices at the Kenya embassies in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. While labour migration is viewed positively, given its contribution to development through skills, transfer and remittances, there is an urgent need to streamline processes and governance to guarantee, secure and protect the constitutional rights and well-being of all Kenyans, according to the report. So, according to the reports by the Ministry of Labour, at least 80,000 Kenyans live and work in Saudi Arabia, with the majority serving as domestic workers. But senators say the contributions of migrant workers to the economy has come at a heavy price. Torture, mistreatment, and even death. So we want it stopped until and unless
the Ministry
safety
of Labour
can be guaranteed. Don't let any more go.
I think that I see what the senators are doing, all right? And this also, goes hand in hand with what the PS for Foreign Affairs was telling the National Assembly. We have serious issues with the Kenyans who are getting employed in this country, especially Saudi Arabia and then the other countries in the Gulf. We have serious issues. We cannot really protect them. We are seeing very many of them dying. 94, was it, that were reported to have died by the PS? 93 Kenyans died in the Middle East this year alone. Those are very many. Now, the recommendation to say, the Ministry of Labour should, first of all, establish the status of those in the Middle East. Fine, that's okay. Ministry of Labour should now look at the policy, and if you don't have, then let's stop Kenyans going out. I think that's where now I part ways with Sakaja and his team. I think they should be saying the Ministry of Labour has no option but to do this. If we have a problem at the helm of the ministry, or if you have a problem with the National Employment Authority, or if you have a problem, whatever, sort out that problem, because Kenyans are looking for job opportunities. And these are job opportunities. We have an agreement that has been signed between Kenya and Saudi Arabia, between the governments of the two countries, that yes, this is the process that shall be followed in people getting to work in Saudi Arabia.
I agree. And they're also...
Make it work.
True. And we must also realize that there are other job categories that Kenyans are working in, which are working seamlessly.
Yep.
It's just that this comes out because we hear of these issues.
It is manual labor.
That's it. And because it is, in a lot of cases, unregulated, and you are dealing with the very basic units of society, which is the family, you're dealing there, and people don't really want to get involved in what happens there. However, because they're going from government to government, it is a kink that can be worked out. So I think it needs to be sorted out. There are many other professions that work there, from medical, engineering, etc., etc. It happens, it works seamlessly. There's not an issue there. This can be sorted. It can work.
It needs to be sorted. Philippines had this sorted many years ago in terms of how the Filipinos go to work in Saudi Arabia and other countries. It is government to government. It is harmonized. It's seamless. They go, they work, they come back, they are reporting to their own government. We have those opportunities in this country. Why aren't we making them work?
It's because...
Why is it that we allow some rogue agent? We talk about, there's an agency here, that we don't know what this agency is doing. How is an agency able to transport people from Kenya to
And
to
why
Saudi
do we
Arabia?
need the agencies?
Bloody, we have a national employment authority.
We do.
Big agency of government.
What do they do? Is that not what they're supposed to do? The moment middlemen come into a story, guarantee. Oh, yes. Because they are, whether it is in the tea, the coffee sector, think of any sector, the moment you bring in middlemen, even the insurance business, There was an issue with the brokers. Middlemen in this country are usually the bane of this. Anytime you hear of an issue and it's gone sideways, the middlemen.
And also, well, it's, for me, the bigger issue here is there appears to be some collusion or some direct juxtaposition between the government doing its job because you see, these agencies can come in and they can be regulated. In fact, there's no agency that's not licensed by the government. So it's licensed and it has been vetted, so to speak, by the Ministry of Labour. So that means the Ministry of Labour knows who is, we know, you are working on behalf and these are the regulations. Come and check constantly. Are you following the laid out procedure? Because we can do that. Now they turn a blind eye because they're the ones who are running these agencies. And I dare say that people in the Ministry of Labour have business of human trafficking, selling our people to Saudi Arabia.
It would actually explain why it is the ministry is concerned. They don't seem to be doing anything.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you would. I'll give you an example of someone who works in Qatar and they have an au pair, same thing, and she happens to be Chinese. The Chinese government wrote them a letter in Qatar saying, we see you have hired this individual 1, 2, 3, and these are the regulations as per 1, 2, 3. Yes. You know these are the things that you're supposed to follow. You follow? Yes. It's been checked out and it's been regulated. You sign, you say yes.
And the government of China knows that this person works here.
Here.
The government of Kenya does not know where many of our domestic workers are.
No, they don't.
And we have a government. And now the senators are saying, in fact, we're going to stop Kenyans from going.
So now, if you can't
stop Kenyans from going.
If who cannot regulate,
why do you want to stop Kenyans? Safety? Why don't you ensure that you make it safe? Why don't you make sure that you regulate it well? Why stop Kenyans from going?
Yeah. Sanisha, that's cabinet secretary, do whatever that needs to be done. Final story is the third one.
Did you know, for instance, Eric?
Yeah.
No. I think you go ahead and say. Eric,
let me do this one. Then you can do that one in the next hour, right?
Yes, please.
A journey by a family from Muranga to accompany their relative to a burial ceremony in Nakuru ended tragically after a road accident killed 4 members traveling in the same car. The accident at Nyeri along the Nairobi-Nakuru highway claimed the lives of 77-year-old William Kamau, his 63-year-old wife Jane Joki, and their daughters 40-year-old Rhoda Nyeri and 37-year-old Evelyn Waithera, who were headed to the burial. Kamau's nephew Moses Kamau, who was also in the car, sustained serious injuries and is recuperating at the PCA Kikuyu Hospital. One family going for a funeral. Father, mother, 2 daughters perish.
What happened?
An accident.
Do they give details of the accident?
No,
they don't say. They don't say exactly what caused the accident, because the people who are now frantically trying to look for them is Kamau's son. Nelson Muthui says after a family meeting on Sunday, Waithera was told to go pick up their parents at Tena Estate home in Nairobi and drive them to Nakuru. He says how he frantically tried to reach out to his parents to know how far they had reached and to inform them that he had arrived safely in Nakuru to no avail. Before the accident, he had spoken to them before the accident. I called Waithera and my father's phones, but I couldn't reach them. It was then when I called my other sister and a police officer received the phone and explained that my family members had been involved in an accident and advised me to proceed to Tigoni police station for more details. This story doesn't tell us exactly what happened in that accident. I mean, how did the accident occur?
Yeah, I mean...
It's just that one son is waiting for his parents and his sisters to come for his in-laws' funeral. Calls to say, oh, we have arrived. They speak. Next, he's calling, how far are you? Police officer picks the phone, says, there's been an accident. Come to Tigoni. And that's when you learn that all of them have died. And the one who is alive is your nephew. He's in critical condition. A very sad story there. Let's get to the news first. A very good morning to you. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is now 7 a.m.
Sugar
spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. The British ambassador to Kenya, Jane Marriott, is today expected to visit Laikipia County, where the British military train. The visit comes as the British government continues to be asked to take action against a British soldier who allegedly killed a 21-year-old woman, Agnes Wanjiru, 9 years ago. It is reported that Marriott will be accompanied by Defence CS Eugene Omalwa, with the country administration insisting that they will continue to push for justice. Omalwa appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Defence and Foreign Affairs, defending the government against allegations that it had not taken the matter seriously.
There is no such cover-up. Probably there might have been a delay, and that we must own up. So we have the necessary legal and institutional framework to deal with this matter because of that agreement.
Agnes Wanjiru's body was found inside a septic tank in 2012 as reports emerged that she had been killed by one of the British soldiers in Nanyuki, Laikipia County. Meanwhile, the Nanyuki court later this month is expected to rule on whether British soldiers can be convicted by a local court. Now, Kenya is expected to achieve 100% clean energy efficiency by 2030. Speaking at an ongoing COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland, President Uhuru Kenyatta said per hour Kenya had reached between 73 and 90% of its clean energy consumption. Kenyatta also took the opportunity to list the steps Kenya had taken in connecting Kenyans to electricity, saying the rate has increased from 30% to 70% over the past 9 years.
Kenya is a pace setter in the energy sector. We are among the top 8 global leaders in geothermal power development and home to the largest wind power projects on the African continent. Currently, close to 90% of the electricity used by Kenyans is from renewable energy sources, and we plan to achieve 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is doing her fair share. Let me, however, hasten to add that these are mere baby steps relative to the enormity of the climate change challenge.
World record holder in the long-distance race, Eliud Kipchoge, who is the ambassador for environmental impact, is among those who attended the conference. China's carbon emissions are vast and growing, dwarfing those of other countries. Experts agree that without big reductions in China's emissions, the world cannot win the fight against climate change. In 2020, China's President Xi Jinping said his country would aim for its emissions to reach the highest point before 2030 and for carbon neutrality before 2060. His statement has now been confirmed as China's official position ahead of the COP26 Global Climate Summit in Glasgow. But China has not said exactly how these goals will be achieved. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has criticized the leaders of China and Russia for not turning up for the COP26 climate summit. He said climate was a gigantic issue and China walked away, adding it was the same thing with Russia and Putin. Neither Russian President Vladimir Putin nor Chinese leader Xi Jinping are at the summit. And Kanu chairman and Baringo Senator Gideon Moi has mourned the death of former Director General of the Agriculture Credit Corporation, Gideon Toritich. Speaking at Toritich's funeral in Eldama Ravine, Senator Moi described the deceased as a generous man and a man who volunteered to help anyone in need and to be a role model.
And all the functions of the Moi family were conducted when there was a master ceremony needed, and the planning was all conducted by his favorite nephew, Gideon. So I greatly appreciated of what Gideon did for us as a family.
Now, Kenya recorded 70 new COVID-19 cases from a sample size of 5,755 tested in the last 24 hours. The country's positivity rate is at 1.2%. The total number of confirmed cases in Kenya now stands at 253,409 from a cumulative test of 2,714,255 conducted thus far. Now, 5 people died when a cargo plane carrying fuel for the UN's World Food Programme crashed near the South Sudan's capital, Juba. The aircraft, a Soviet-era Antonov AN-26 transport plane, crashed shortly after taking off from Juba's international airport, killing everyone on board. The cargo plane, belonging to a local operator, was reportedly carrying 28 barrels of fuel for the WFP to Maban, a district housing more than 100,000 refugees. To sports, and Unai Emery will turn down the chance to become manager of Newcastle United and will instead stay with Villarreal. The ex-Arsenal boss confirmed Tuesday he had been approached by the Premier League club, who made him their first choice to replace Steve Bruce. Sources close to Emery indicate he felt the new Magpies ownership lacked a clear vision for the club. Newcastle had hoped to have the Spaniard in place by the weekend. This is Newswire. Dennis Aseto.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
So, there's traffic on the Uhuru Highway this morning, and it looks quite crazy, guys. I'm not quite sure who left before whom, but it seems like you've all found yourselves on the Uhuru Highway this morning. I'm very sorry. In fact, if you're around that South Sea area and you're trying to get in, just don't forget about it. Just keep going straight. If you have not taken my advice and used the Southern Bypass, I am sorry. Right now, if you've not left, use the Southern Bypass. If you're trying to get onto Mombasa Road, you might be there for some time. Jogo Road doesn't look too bad. Gong Road is building up. Coming out of Westlands, also that one is building up as well. Use Wayaki Way and then get onto the Red Hill Link Road. That is your option. No, I can't tell you anything else. Coming off the Thika Superhighway, we're having traffic all the way towards the drive-in, getting out into the city as well. Kiambu Road also has joined that drama. Coming out of Westlands, again, use that bypass. The Eastern Bypass, Wahala, that was there earlier is still there, and we have asked you to tell us what's going on. Please help me so we can help others. Right. Let's all be good this morning. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127. Let's keep things moving.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation
it's 7
Room,
minutes after 7. Good morning. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, the second hour of our show. We'll be here until 10 in the morning. City, today's proverb.
Wakusha mbombe ikaoka mawe.
That's what's today.
Let me just start it again. Wakusha, it depends on how I say it. Mbombe ikaoka mawe.
Ikaoka mawe.
You have shaken the water until it has become milk.
You've shaken the water until it has become milk.
Or you've tried so hard until you've done the impossible.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
You've performed a miracle.
I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Something that nobody else would have been able to do because of your consistency and persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Shake the water
until it becomes milk.
Yeah.
Mm.
The Nobel laureate is trying to shake that water. It's refusing to become milk.
That piece for which, or the activities that were considered to be peace activities that led to his receiving the Nobel Prize, clearly they don't seem to be working at home.
So, because he received it for what he was able to broker between Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Yes.
Right? So the question would be then, how come this same application then cannot be used in country?
Remember, the man did have support. And what you then see,
Let's start from the top. Okay? A nationwide state of emergency has been declared in Ethiopia because of, following what has been some unrelenting turmoil, and not just turmoil, it's actually civil war, if we just call it, internal conflict, armed conflict internally, that began last year. Ethiopia's cabinet has now declared a nationwide state of emergency, effective immediately, and authorities in Addis Ababa have told citizens to prepare to defend the capital as fighters from the northern region of Tigray threatened to march towards the city. According to the state-affiliated Fana Broadcasting, it says the state of emergency is aimed to protect civilians from atrocities being committed by the terrorist TPLF in several parts of the country. They're referring to the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which has been fighting the federal government for a year now. The 6-month state of emergency is allowing, among other things, for roadblocks to be established, transport services to be disrupted, curfews to be imposed, and for the military to take over in certain areas. Anyone suspected of having links with these so-called terrorist groups could also be detained without a court warrant, while any citizen who has reached the age of military service could be called to fight. Our country is facing grave danger to its existence, its sovereignty and unity, and we cannot dispel this danger through the usual law enforcement systems and procedures, according to Justice Minister Gideon Timotheus. Nikubaya.
But it wasn't always, as you say, Kubaya. Though, if you have to look at the history of Ethiopia, beginning from around 1135 AD, this country has seen conflicts. It has seen very many conflicts. Some among themselves, some with external forces, Portugal, Ottoman, Italians, they've seen it. But remember that process, and to the point where they became a federal government, right? It was just understanding the peculiarity of their own population and saying, something. An element of self-determination is not a bad thing for a country. Okay? Problem arises to what extent? Remember, other countries that actually have experimented with the federal system, there are certain functions of government that remain national. One of them is the military.
Yep.
In many countries, the police service is, we say decentralized, but the military, it is always within the ambit of the government. Now, Ethiopia, unfortunately, because of the issues that they've had in the not-too-recent past, look at the particular straw that broke these camels back. Going about your business, Abiy becomes prime minister, then there's a small matter of an election. That issue of the election, to vote, not to vote, to have an election, not to have an election, we are having the election, come what may. And then before you know it, there's a disagreement. Before you know it, we have a full-scale war. And then what then happens? It's not just the Tigrayans alone. No, the Oromo Liberation Front have also entered. They're also saying, we can lend you a little support. People are Amara. They're also saying, some of them can lend you. Why? It's like every region has their own liberation front.
Yep.
And the thing about the liberation fronts, they're armed.
It's a conglomeration of liberation fronts. Each one is called a liberation something.
Yes. And they're armed. Not with bows and arrows and rungus and crude weapons. Modern day weapons.
Yeah.
Now, you tell me, when you have a country that has this sort of situation, forget militia, forget this band of thugs that are often witnessed in other African countries where all they have machetes and a few people have some guns, some even homemade guns. These guys are armed with modern weapons.
Indeed. But I think we also have to look at the fact that these folks that we are calling Liberation Front, wherever we're calling them, at some point dominated. At some point, 30, 40 years ago, ruled. They did. At some point, they were the ones who controlled government. They controlled power. They controlled the country. Now, with the introduction of what you want to call formal government, right, they were pushed out into that little enclave now, which now they've been advancing out of. So how think about it in other governments or in other countries where things seem to be stable. The control of power is extremely sweet. Having had tasted it before, you're not going to want to get rid of it easily. So when you talk about them having modern weapons and you talk about them saying that the fight that they are bringing is not something that can be joked around with, then I'm starting to think that the high possibility that their fight is also being sponsored to a very large extent by those who enjoyed the benefits of that control at that time and would like to see that returned in the present.
Yep.
It would be very odd to think that rebels or a liberation front are operating just on their own and are able to cause the kind of conflict, one side to the other, that we are seeing today. They enjoyed control. They enjoyed the power before. They were pushed out by what is a formal government today. They didn't take it sitting down. Neither are we seeing that November 2020 until November 2021 is the only time that we've seen this conflict. It is not the case. There have been rumblings, there have been murmurings, there have been uprisings here and there. Maybe this is the ugliest that we've seen in the last, so many years. However, it has been
few years.
Right. But it has been there. It has been there. But what are we seeing? There was a transfer of power, and those from whom the power was taken have not taken it sitting down. And they're saying, no, we want a different form of government in Ethiopia. Are we going to split it through the middle because we're not going to get it? Probably.
It didn't quite get there at the beginning. Not really. If you look at even the conflict that the communist government in Ethiopia had between 1974 up to 1991, it was, some called it an issue of the border, okay? But it looks like Ethiopians don't take it sitting down to a government that is telling them what they don't particularly want to hear. No. They will quickly say, excuse me, we are not going to take this. Do you understand? And if you don't understand, fine. Why don't we use methods that are easier for you to understand? But what makes this one unique, remember, the Tigrayans were in power for a very long time, and the Tigrayans were instrumental in the eventual permanent removal of the communist remnants that particular country had for the longest time. They spearheaded that fight for an extremely long time. Remember, many of these liberation fronts were fighting the government not because they had a quarrel, but many of them wanted to secede. They wanted self-determination. They wanted their own little government. And so the central government in Ethiopia is saying, you're not going to do anything of that sort. But why this one now is getting to be complicated is because by the time you have other liberation fronts, essentially these are armed, trained.
Has Abiy Ahmed bitten too much, more than he could chew? Was he trying to walk too fast? Has he flown too close to the sun? This is why I'm asking this. How did he come to power? He came to power because there was turmoil. There was pushback against the then government that led to the resignation of the Prime Minister, Haile Mariam Desalegn. And then this young man is then propelled to become the head. Who were behind Abiy Ahmed's rise to the top?
Actually, who were behind it?
Some of them are said to be, some of those leaders, for example, very strong support from the Oromo Liberation Front, had some very good support from the Amhara because he has, his parents are from both sides. He had
support.
Some good support. Some what do you call them? Godfathers. Gets to the top and immediately you start hearing conversations about either he and the Godfathers are falling out.
Not agreeing.
They're not agreeing. The direction that Abiy Ahmed is taking and the direction that the Godfathers want to be taken is not similar. And then there has been that other conversation. Now, did the Godfather actually just want Abiy Ahmed to get to that seat and occupy it temporarily as the Godfather now cleanses himself and then comes and takes over the seat? Was that the situation or was it not? So the falling out, it's no wonder that you can see the OLA joining this particular issue, the TPLF. Those two don't work together anyway. The Oromo Liberation Front and the Tigrayans People Liberation Front It's the Oromos that have been demonstrating for a long time, for the last 30 years, that the TPLF has been at the helm of government.
Yes.
And now they're working together. To what end?
Who is their common enemy?
Yeah.
The enemy of your enemy is your friend. You have to think about it like that. So if you have a common adversary and you've previously been at loggerheads with one another, it just makes sense. We've seen many examples. It just makes sense that even if you don't share the common thread or the common backbone of ideology, that you have, in this case, somebody who is frustrating you in equal measure, you will likely team up to fight that adversary. Whether your ideologies are the same or not, you will get together. And you'll find that once that adversary has been put out in terms of smoke, you'll find that you'll split your ways once again.
You know, the question that begs to be asked and then answered is, who owns OLA? And who owns
TPLF?
Yes. There are people who others answer to. Who are they? It clearly is not the Prime Minister. Clearly.
There are big issues here that are at play. And that's why I think this is not just a small-time crisis. That's why I started by asking that question. Did Abiy Ahmed move too fast? Immediately he took office, remember, he came in and said, all right, so people have been agitating for some changes. I'm going to come and try and institute those changes and bring those changes. Those changes were shaking the status quo. And the shake of the status quo, was it negotiated or was he pushing it through? Because if he was negotiating it, then it would have made the people understand, okay, you guys, you've been here for long. I can understand you have serious control of very many, arms of government, right? So let's negotiate on how you can easily work this out. Or maybe he tried and they were like, young man, just sit over there, all right? We know what we're doing. And he was like, I've got the instruments of power. Remember, even before he received the Nobel Peace Prize, Abiy Ahmed there was an attempt at some grenade being thrown somewhere where he was addressing a rally.
Yes, there was.
Right? And there have been all these conversations whether, was that, a real attempt, or was it him trying to show that, you see guys, you see I'm being fought, that's why I need to take a hard stance on the move that I'm going to make. So he comes in and says, so this is the direction we are taking. We are going to have one national party, and this is the movement of the party. So all you guys join. And they told him, we're not joining that thing of yours. Oh, he goes ahead and, strikes peace with Eritrea on the other side. And the people inside are wondering, so what is it? You're moving too fast. You're doing too many things. He gets global recognition by getting the Nobel Peace Prize. So with that Nobel Peace Prize, he also comes back home and see, even the world sees what I'm doing. So this is about time that we change this country. I think I get a feeling that he moved too fast. I could be wrong. I don't have a...
What tune was he dancing to?
Yep, it's an interesting one, this one.
No, it is a very interesting one because if you were to understand the politics of that particular region, it isn't different from politics in any other region. Even when somebody is a prime minister, even when somebody is a president, they are always the power brokers.
Yes.
Always. In the developed countries, it's the political parties. And those within the political parties who are the bigwigs and who run and control the parties, those are the power brokers. But even in our country, we have power brokers. There are people who have a say and who will even have the last say in many matters. The unfortunate thing about the Ethiopian situation is this. When you have a fully fledged civil war, and this one is a fully fledged civil war, what it then means is the likelihood of you losing power completely is very high. Now, once you lose power completely, it means somebody else is going to, because power abhors a vacuum, somebody else is going to take over that power. And it appears that the Tigrayans who had been in power want to come back to power.
Oh, indeed they do.
Yes, but now they already have partners whom they have not always seen eye to eye with, the Oromo Liberation Front. I'd like to see a situation where they manage this alliance that they have, because alliances are very good when you have a common foe. If you vanquish the foe, a new problem arises within the alliance itself. It always does.
Of course. This is not a it's going to end badly because those two now will start turning on each other.
They will.
And starting to ask themselves. Although it could also happen like they did in the 90s when they removed Mengistu Haile Mariam and they decided, okay, so let's form a coalition that's going to be running the country. We're going to be the big boys in the coalition, but let's work together. Let's all work together. Only that the Oromo were not involved in that particular coalition. But they worked. And for those many years, Ethiopia had now started moving and growing.
They stabilized tremendously.
Yes.
But you see now, the problem of exclusion. Okay?
What if you want to look at it from the other side, I think it was a little bit more than exclusion, because the TPLF was pushed out completely of the center of Ethiopia and were pushed back into that enclave, and funding was cut off from them completely. They were essentially not part of the Ethiopian economy anymore. They had to fend for themselves, and to do what Abiy continued calling rebellious in nature, because then they were trying to, as seen as the other side, fend for themselves. So he did a lot more than just exclude them. He cut them off completely. Those are the dregs that they're dealing with today, remembering those things that happened to that were done to them, and as far as they're concerned, it was responsibility of this one man. What they thought was going to happen, a government of inclusion, rule of inclusion, did not happen at all. If anything, he made living for them very, 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 very difficult.
Actually, they did worse than that, because Tigrayans were profiled. And there are reports that people who worked for government agencies like the
Serious purge.
Yes, there was.
But then, look. For those 30 odd years that the Tigrayans were in power,
yes,
what positions in government had they occupied?
No, what position did they not occupy?
Right.
That is the question you ought to ask.
Oh, that's where the inclusion conversation happens. Because the reason why there was all this push and backlash that led to Abiy Ahmed becoming prime minister was that it's a complaint of lack of inclusion. There is a serious dominance by a small minority of the population that is occupying like everything. It's basically controlling the government.
Actually,
so when you come in and you're trying to balance it out, it'll appear like you're profiling and removing. But maybe what you're trying to do is basically rationalize the public service.
Do you know something? You have actually mentioned an issue that perhaps I should draw a parallel with Kenya. When Jomo Kenyatta passed away, there was a lot of talk, and a great deal of it from the Kiambu area, that they were being marginalized. When Daniel Arap Moi stopped being president, there was a lot of talk in his backyard that they were being marginalized. When Jaramogi Oginga Odinga resigned, there was talk in his background they were being marginalized. Now, the question I want to ask is, how and where do you draw the line between being marginalized and being treated like everybody else? Because if your person was in power, you're privileged.
Yes.
You didn't, everything was simple for you because you knew, I know Eric is there and is there. All I require is one phone call and things get done. Now, the moment power changes, I can't make those phone calls. My privilege is gone. Now, how then do you explain, if you're talking about a country like Kenya, where you have how many, 43? Or we're not 44 tribes. Why have we got to 45? We are having a discussion about 2 or 3 communities who have had their individuals from their communities at the helm of power in various positions. What about the rest of the country?
Yeah.
What about the other people in the country who haven't had any of their so-called person in that position? Should they, in one voice, say they've been marginalized?
So this is affirmative action.
Actually, it is an affirmative discussion, because it has to be an affirmative discussion. What happened in Ethiopia, I would argue, was they were fermenting trouble from day one. Right now, the BBI claimed that this is what they were trying to sort out. This issue of having any community dominant. So what do? Expand the executive. Because our thinking is that power and goodies arrive at your doorstep in your communities when you have somebody, one of your own, at that place. So expand it. Don't make it this mythical thing or this thing that only a few people get favored. That was the narrative. The thinking one can understand. Now you tell me, we've had a situation where the dominance in this country is with communities who are dominant in terms of numbers. Now, in a country where the community that is dominant is not really even the largest.
It's about 8% of the population.
Yes.
And here you are. I mean, you are the ones who are leading.
Yes. What percentage again did you say?
None.
Yes. And you occupy literally every key sector in the country. Again, you may not know. The Air Force, all those jet fighters, all, not some, all Tigrayans. Now, how do you explain that exactly? It's dominance of the worst possible kind. It's a tinder keg. It's a sort of thing that sooner rather than later is going to come to haunt you.
A lot of things are happening. Before we take this break, let's hear from Karaoke, our friend in Lavington. Hi, Karaoke.
Good morning, awesome trio. I was just impelled to add my sentiments.
Add, Twendele, yes.
Yeah, so, when Abiy Ahmed started the onslaught against Tigray, there was a time when the UN and the US pressured the Eritrean military to pull away and not get involved. And I think for about a month they did not. So it's quite inexplicable how Eritrea later decided to withdraw its forces, against no pressure, because later on, they just showed they defied the UN and the US, and they went on with their onslaught against TPLF. So there are some observers who hold that Afewerki, who is the president in Eritrea, actually met his objective. His objective being to divide Ethiopia better. That his troops' involvement was not so much, to assist
support
Abiy,
Abiy.
but actually, and I think one of the things that Abiy, or one of the mistakes that Abiy did, was to underestimate the Tigrayan, because the Tigrayan forces, because even military analysts will tell you that the Ethiopia's military, ENDF, the finest military strategists are actually from Tigray. So when he isolated TPLF, the finest military strategies actually were left with TPLF, and the fact that TPLF is now threatening to march into Addis is a kind of a confirmation that actually the ENDF was Tigrayan. So I just sort of sharing that. I've been following up on this matter for more than a year. I think 1 year ago I even tweeted and said Kenya should start preparing to handle refugees. It doesn't come to that, because this is the world's most populous landlocked country. So when you're talking about refugees, it will be a very bad situation for Kenya. It will make the Somalia situation to be like child's play.
From your reading, Karaoke, what are these missteps that happened in Ethiopia, and where did they begin?
I think Abiy has got some history in the military. Abiy had a personal vendetta against TPLF. So when he started the Prosperity Party, I think from the word go, and you remember even when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, he declined to grant the media, an interview or to address the media after he got. And it's everybody says that the fact that he got Nobel Peace Prize notwithstanding, he had a plan against TPLF, and which the world did not know of. And actually, the reason why he got the Nobel Peace Prize was because he brought their erstwhile enemies, Eritrea. They ostensibly made peace with Eritrea, but the plan was, I'm trying to create an alliance from the north, from a country in the north,
with your enemies.
TPLF. So that's a whole irony that maybe the Nobel Peace Prize panelists will be discussing, or a lesson for them. But Abiy Ahmed has had a personal vendetta against TPLF, and the other irony is that he was elected He was selected to be the prime minister because he spoke about peace and unification, and politicians in Ethiopia thought he would be a good compromise. PM, he was young, he was fresh, and so where it started, I think it started with Abiy Ahmed beef with the Tigrayans. Abiy Ahmed is Oromo. With the Tigrayans.
Beef with the Tigrayans.
Yes.
Yes.
Abiy Ahmed is Oromo, and Oromos traditionally have felt that Tigrayans are the ones who have persecuted Oromos and other communities in Ethiopia, apart from maybe the Amharas, because the Amharas have been part of the ruling class. So this is the first Oromo prime minister, modern prime minister. So he felt maybe that he could use his position to
right all the wrongs.
Yes, but then I think it was a grave mistake. He underestimated TPLF. TPLF military, because it's a federal state, some of the finest military hardware were actually left in the hands of the TPLF. Even though,
actually, Karaoke, it wasn't left in the hands. They purposed it that way. They were in power, and they understood that power wasn't just a question of them being in political leadership. They also made sure that the military, and a lot of that hardware you speak of, was nestled in their own geographical area.
They had to have the might. You're 8% of the population, and the guys who are against you are 35% of the population. Really? Arm yourself. Be ready.
But also don't forget that historically the top generals in the Ethiopian military were Tigrayan.
Yes.
So they could easily have decided, let's amass the finest pieces of hardware. In any case, we are the military.
Yep.
It's going to be very interesting to watch the next few days. I hope, everybody in Addis will be fine. I think there's a strong UN and AU community. There are a good number of Kenyans that I know. The other thing that is not spoken much about is AU silence.
We will actually be talking about that after this break. We want to talk about now what else should the international community, especially the neighbors, do. Thank you, Karaoke.
All right, cheers.
Okay, 23 to 8. Let's take a break. Take a look at the weather and traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 26, highs of 26 today, sea lows of 15. It's mostly sunny at 26 in Nakuru, and we'll see highs of that as well. 25 will be the high in Nyeri, where it's raining at 24, coming down to lows of 15. Eldoret is mostly cloudy, highs of 24 and lows of 13, while in Mombasa today, mostly cloudy conditions at 30. Go to highs of 31 and lows of 25. Malindi at 30 is partly sunny, highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's 18 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions in Kisumu, highs of 27 and lows of 17. While in Kakamega, 19 degrees and mostly cloudy, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 18, highs of 25, lows of 17 today. While in Dar es Salaam, mostly cloudy at 30, highs of 31 and lows of 25. 14 degrees and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 29 and lows of 10. Lagos is clear at 24, highs of 32 today. Kinshasa, partly cloudy at 23. That'll be today's low, going to highs of 31. Okay, so if you're in the eastern part of the city, sorry, because now there's traffic everywhere. Jogo Road and everything else that touches Jogo Road today don't catch fire. Okay, so also looking at it coming then from Landis going towards Kamkunji roundabout, there also cannot pass, as what we say, and not moving this morning at all. This one passed bumper to bumper, as they say. Uhuru Highway, as you're going into the city today, also every single roundabout that is in that general direction is not moving either. So I don't know what to tell you. If you haven't left, and I don't know why you would not have left by now, but if you haven't, just don't even think about it. Use the bypasses. Southern. I've given you now, beg. Use the southern bypass. It looks pretty good. Until you get to Langata Road, then boom. Things are not moving there either as you get towards the Wilson Airport, out then towards the Timor roundabout. Everybody now coming in from South Sea is now trying to get to that area because what? Uhuru Highway is blocked. Then as you're moving out in that direction, you get stuck there around that Langata Road once again. Bagathi Way also is piling up to the Thika Superhighway, another story completely. Seems like a day for stories. Hopefully we'll not get stuck here listening to the story. Use the bypasses. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch. Text us on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right, 19 minutes.
94.4 Spice FM.
As it's unfolding in Ethiopia. Joel Mwanyaga says the head of Ethiopia was warned by the UN several times early this year to stop bombarding the Tigrayans. Well, yeah, they've been talking. Okay. So, can we achieve whatever we want to achieve by any other means apart from bombarding people and causing some serious blockade, and that's forcing people out of the country, and people who are in Tigray who are reportedly facing starvation, don't have access to food, don't have access to medical supplies, and now they are being forced to cross over into Sudan. Can we have another way of dealing with this? There has been like almost zero communication network allowed in that part of the country.
Well,
so people don't even know.
No, you actually don't know
what's happening there.
And it's intentional.
Not only that, when people talk about the advances that the military is also making, you really can't verify it because people can't go there. But also of significance, even before all this now gathered momentum, there had been attempts at peace negotiations. And various Tigrayan groups were willing to come to the table to have a discussion about. But conditionalities, they said, yes, we are, but we need to tell you the things that we'd want to put in place in order for this to happen. Somewhere along the line, my reading of it, there may have been discussions about peace, but there was an absence of
goodwill.
Thank you very much, Eric. Somewhere, there wasn't goodwill.
There wasn't goodwill, because just like Karaoke is saying, I think both sides were looking at each other as adversaries. All right? So you young man, you're coming in here and your goal seems to be to vanquish us, to remove us from the position that we've held. And the young man comes in and thinks, you people, what you've been doing, you need to get out of power. So the only negotiation we are having here is we are taking away your power. Now, that cannot be a negotiation. So please give us some power. No, I'm taking away your power. Then now, first I take it away, and then now we start discussing how much of it I can give you back. That is not going to be a good conversation.
No, it can't be a good conversation. It's going to be a very bloody conversation at that end. And also, they are quarreling. Who's suffering?
The ordinary people. The people now, when we're talking about how many have died, the people that we're talking about facing a humanitarian crisis because there's no food, there's no water, there's no electricity. The people now who have to leave their villages whereby previously they were eking out at least a semi-sustainable existence, now have had to move, have had to flee because of the fighting. This is what we're talking about. Who suffers? When these two are unable to agree, and the things that they then institute to kind of stick it to the other person, it's not necessarily the both of them who are suffering. It's the people who have to deal with all the shrapnel that falls, literally, that have to run away from their homes, that have to deny children food, that have to deal with other things that have to do with conflict, back and forth, they're the ones who are suffering today. Humanitarian crisis untold, probably one of the worst this region has seen in the last 50 years. This is what we're talking about. Just because it's not being spoken about, as what we are hearing about is the conflict. We're not looking at the humanitarian side of things in terms of what is really happening there. It is an absolute mess, folks. Right now, people.
How do we
without
know
food,
this?
That's the thing. We do you know how we know right now? The way we know is by those who have been going in to give food and relief. That's what we know.
By those who have been interviewed and who have escaped and gone on to other countries.
Yes, and they're telling their side.
And they're reporting
of the
and
story.
saying yes, because
Things
even some
bad.
of these so-called liberation forces, they are also being accused of inflicting a lot of pain and suffering.
Of course.
Attacking, killing people. But, this free-for-all is what happens in a conflict such as this one here.
Then you have to ask, which irks me to my very core a lot of times, that then what is the role of the African Union, who interestingly enough sits in Addis Ababa?
Addis Ababa is the seat of Africa.
It's the seat of Africa, right? You have to ask yourself the question, what is it? I've often said, and people will laugh at me when I tell you that, you know what, if there is an organization that mimics a puppet the best, the AU probably is one of them. That there is a mandate which has been set out. There is agreement by countries in terms of what the operation is supposed to be. But in terms of actual practice, no. It mimics at best. It mimics a mirror image of what the initial intention of this organization was meant to be.
So for the last 1 year, the
happening.
AU has been largely quiet, has it?
What has the AU said? In the last,
remember when the conflict began,
what has the AU,
did make overtures.
They've been making some statements
said
here
in the
and
last 1 year about how things have gone. I'm talking about the last 1 year. Today is the 3rd of November. I'm talking from November 2020. What has been said or done or instituted by the African Union in the time that we have seen things digress in the manner in which they have.
The African Union has been, of course, doing what it does. It has been releasing statements, has been offering to mediate in this conversation, has been, trying to do 1, 2, 3 things here and there. The greater point here is the African Union being felt in Ethiopia?
Anywhere.
Is the African Union being felt in what is...
Eric, which area of conflict in this continent has the African Union been
we're
felt?
discussing Ethiopia. And we can argue very many things, because of logistical challenges. So the African Union is based in Ethiopia.
It's nestled in Addis Ababa.
The headquarters is in Addis Ababa.
So they don't really need to do much. They can just speak from where they are. They have meeting rooms. They have everything.
Actually...
What has the African Union really done? Has it been felt?
More importantly, this is crunch time for the African Union because the country which houses your headquarters is in turmoil. So all these discussions that you normally have within the union regarding other countries.
So let's even say it has been difficult for you to operate before.
We're now in Ethiopia.
It's been far logistics. You've not been able to move. You've been depending on other countries where you have representation to be able to get things done. Okay. It is in Addis Ababa. You are right there. In terms of logistics and having to move around, in terms of being able to pull people for negotiation here, there, what is it? What is the problem? My theory remains the same, that this is an organization that has been set up and at best it's been lip service for the longest time. That is it actually fulfilling the mandate for which it was designed originally?
Is it to the extent that they ought to? Okay, so the African Union has been making moves in Ethiopia. That's for a fact. They, for example, formed a commission to look into the Tigrayan conflict. The chair of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa, appointed former presidents Joachim Chissano of Mozambique, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf for Liberia, Kgalema Motlanthe of South Africa, as special envoys to seek a ceasefire and start mediation talks in Ethiopia. Since November 2020, the AU has not sent any envoy, nor has it offered any peace proposal.
Which is the
This
data I
is what
asked
has
you
been
about.
recorded in the Africa report. This is in contrast with the efforts of the US and the EU, who sent a series of envoys to secure a cessation of hostilities and bring the warring sides to the table. There are at least 3 reasons that explain why the IU has given up on resolving. 1, the burden of history. In 1963, the heads of 32 African states signed the charter establishing OAU. Ethiopia was not only the founding member, but also its nucleus. Consequently, the leadership of Haile Selassie's government has left a permanent legacy on what happens in Ethiopia. For the AU, Ethiopia's anti-colonial successes are the bedrock of its founding principles. In short, Ethiopia has a special place in the Union. It's the organization's heartbeat. Number 2, the curse of geography. After 59 years of having its headquarters in Addis Ababa, the AU is both a landmark and a focus of the city's flurry of diplomatic activities. The AU's proximity to the corridors of power in Addis Ababa is a main restraint to its ability to influence its hosts. The upshot is that the war in Tigray gets silent treatment. Because you're here, I mean, you can't just be talking dirty when your people are in town. The third reason that is being fronted by the Africa report is the dearth of institutions. The diplomatic efforts of the US and the EU can be partly attributed to the pressure from human rights institutions and international media. Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, CNN, AFP and others have reported on atrocities including gang rape, extrajudicial killings, destruction of properties, and other crimes committed during the 8 months of fighting in Tigray. But there are no African human rights institutions or media houses that can launch similar investigations and use their findings to lobby their governments to push for a ceasefire or peace talks. See those reasons? The AU is there.
So they're looking for reasons not to do anything substantive.
Body and spirit, but in terms of actually being able to do much, not much.
Eric, let me ask
But
you
what is
something.
needed is being actually able to do a lot. You don't need body and spirit right now. Look at what is happening. In previous conflicts around the continent, whereby you needed action, and you have to ask the question: then what happened? How long will you have an organization that sits about, fluffing about, sending envoys? And I asked about the November 2020 date, didn't I? 2020 until today, envoys have been sent. A commission has been formed.
They set up a commission.
In 2020, in November. And then you ask yourself, until today, which envoys have been sent? 0. Till today. That 1 year span.
What have they done?
That's the question.
Not much.
That's the question.
Are they willing to do it? We have Hillary on the line calling in from Embakasi. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Hillary?
I'm Hillary,
Yes.
and I'm listening to the conversation live streaming from YouTube. I'd like to give my contributions
Go ahead.
regarding the situation about Ethiopia and the African Union.
Okay.
Actually, you see, in Ethiopia can say that Ethiopians can help themselves. You see the Tigrayans and the Oromo. These are two rival groups. So I don't think you have a goodwill to help each to come into peace, because you'll find that the Oromo have got their own standards, the Tigrayan have got their own standards, and you'll find that AU is represented by African countries. And you'll find that the African country leaders, they are friends with, maybe you'll find this part of group has got friends with the Tigrayan, and this one have got friends with the other side.
Yep.
So you'll find that it's difficult even to bring a solution to that country, because it's like, I can say that it's like tribalism has been the concept of tribalism has been taken into the African platform. You see that, because this actually you'll find that in Africa, leaders are being elected in form of mostly tribalism, and they make alliances with other groups. So you'll find that unlike the European Union, whereby the elections are free and everything is quite open, with the African, however much we try, we always have groups that we are vested into it.
So there's basically just a lot of partisanship in Africa.
Yeah, there's a lot of partisanship in Africa.
Okay, thank you, Hillary.
We need to look at the liberation that have happened in Africa. There are parties that mostly support it.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you for calling. There's a statement that was released on the 16th of June this year by the African Union Commission on Human and People's Rights. It says, in accordance with its mandate of promotion and protection of human rights in Africa under Article 45 of the AU on Human and People's Rights, the African Charter, they informed the general public that the Commission of Inquiry on Tigray will officially commence its work on the 17th of June. The Commission of Inquiry was established on the fact-finding mission to the Tigray region in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, adopted at the 32nd extraordinary session held virtually in May. The Commission had a mandate to investigate allegations of violations of international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and to gather all relevant information so as to determine whether the allegations constitute serious and massive violations of human rights. The Commission of Inquiry will begin its work in Banjul, the Republic of Gambia. It will conduct investigations on the ground and in neighboring countries when the conditions are met. You see, all those things that they are talking about, the work was happening in the Gambia. Get the irony. So what should, for example, the neighboring governments do? Especially our government, the Kenyan government. We know, for instance, that Abiy Ahmed in the last couple of months has been touring the region. He has met with Paul Kagame. He has met with the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. He has also had conversations. He has sent the foreign affairs minister to Kenya. He has gone to Turkey. What should Kenya do right now to try and see? We are chairing the Security Council.
We are.
We are the big boys of the world,
If I'm to go by what we've done,
Council.
Done in the past, we've had a good history of it. Whether they're talking about Sudan, whether they're talking about Somalia. We've been able to get the warring factions to actually come to Kenya to have a discussion about the way forward.
After the war has broken out.
Yes. Usually, for peace to be there, sometimes it's unfortunate, but that war needs to break out. I'm not being facetious here. Remember, there are individuals involved in these things, and there are points they want to make. I'm not moralizing. I'm just saying it's a position they want to take. And sometimes the little knocking of the head is when they realize, I think we need to have a discussion, because at some point that conflict, everybody loses.
Yes.
And the reason why people allow themselves to get into conflict is so that there can be some gain. But Ndu, you're talking about the AU. Let's talk about the AU and its independence, really. How independent are you when your headquarters was actually put up for you?
Remember I used the word puppet? There's a reason why I used the word puppet, but please carry on.
Yes. $200 million to put up the headquarters by the Chinese. Okay? AU has a budget of 600 yearly, 47 million US dollars every year. The bulk of that funding is not from the contribution of the African states. It's not. So tell me, should we then not talk to the funders and ask them? Look,
that's why they're the ones that have been very active.
Yes.
EU, US, what do we want to see happening in Ethiopia?
Just tell them directly, folks.
So you come and sort out Ethiopia.
The funding you give us is adequate for us to just run the offices and so that we continue existing. Yes, exactly. But now this one here, since you're the guys who actually give us the money, can you
do something?
Can you come in and do something? Because expecting the AU to do anything beyond talk about it?
Maybe that's what now Biden decided to do. For example, removing Ethiopia from the list of beneficiaries of AGOA yesterday alongside other countries in Africa. Just trying to apply pressure left, right, and center, and saying, because of your human rights track record, you're not going to be allowed to get duty-free access into the American market.
As if we do not know about Guantanamo Bay.
Anyway. Just that little matter. The way in which the OAU was originally envisioned and what is happening now, I think a man like Gaddafi would roll over in his grave a couple of times.
Gaddafi was serious. That was his problem. People who've been serious about actually getting things done are not allowed to live very long because...
Unfortunately.
Because they want to bring an end to this chaos in which many people thrive. They want to set straight things that would actually genuinely even benefit.
Don't forget, people, that among the founders of OAU was Haile Selassie.
I do remember. And this is a man who resisted colonialism to the very end. Yes. Emperor that he was.
Keep it right here for more conversations. In the next hour, let's go to the COP26 conversations and understand. So, what's happening? Our president spoke yesterday, soon after the president of the United States addressed the congregation. What are they discussing? What do we expect to come out of the Glasgow talks? Good morning. It's now 8 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newsroom Dennis Asik. Secondary school will go on a meter break from the 19th to the 23rd of this month. Education PS Julius John says all principals should ensure that the students go for the half-term break. This is a change from the initial term dates, which indicated that they'd open on October 11th to December 23rd without having a midterm break. They therefore go on a 10-day holiday from Christmas Eve until January 2nd next year, then resume for third term from January 3rd to March 4th, 2022. The recent change of plans is thought to be a move aimed at handling the arson cases being witnessed in schools. And parents in Kwale County have been warned against inciting students to cause chaos. The warning comes days after students at Mamunga Girls High School in Simba protested against the head teacher. The students demanded the removal of the head teacher, accusing the teacher of several allegations she denied. The protest caused confusion as parents and students closed the Kombani Kwale Road for a while to lodge their grievances. Earlier, the parents had prevented the head teacher from entering the office. The government plans to revive the deployment of National Police Reservists in Kerio Valley, but under a restructured plan. Rift Valley Regional Coordinator Georgina Tembea said the officers will be trained and deployed in an orderly manner so that they are properly remunerated and put under proper command as part of the National Police Service. He said the NPR's program had not died out but was just suspended for the purpose of refresh planning. Natambea said this was to ensure proper administration and accountable use of arms. Now, the Independent Election Boundaries Commission has registered 35,404 new voters against the targeted population of 142,710 in the enhanced voter registration in Machakos County. Machakos County REBC returning officer Joyce Omalwa said this translates to 24.8% of the targeted population. The exercise was meant to end yesterday. However, the court stopped the conclusion of the exercise. She said the major challenge the commission faced during the registration exercise was lack of political goodwill. She says politicians didn't help to mobilize the youth to turn out and register as voters. Now, the Jubilee Party plans to relaunch the party's activities this month. Former Dagoretti MP Dennis Waweru stressed that the Jubilee Party will remain a force for good in Mount Kenya despite some leaders leaving. This as the party is reportedly developing mechanisms aimed at ousting rebel leaders led by Deputy President William Ruto.
We know we had 11 parties that came together. We know the party that has exited Jubilee is URP. So we are going back to TNA and the other friendly parties who will remain in Jubilee. So we are going to rebrand and relaunch Jubilee this month. We are going to come with a very, very aggressive campaign to sell Jubilee. And I can only tell you to watch the space.
3 African countries will be terminated from the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA from 1st January 2022, according to U.S. President Joe Biden. A statement issued by the Office of the United States Trade Representative Ambassador Catherine Tai said that the Biden administration is deeply concerned by the unconstitutional changes in government in both Mali and Guinea and by the gross violations of internationally recognized human rights being perpetuated by the government of Ethiopia and other parties amid widening conflict in northern Ethiopia. He said these countries will be removed from the program due to actions taken by their governments in violation of the AGOA statute. Now, dozens of students were held inside a Chinese primary school for hours after it was locked down because a staff member tested positive for COVID-19. A large group of parents gathered outside the school anxiously waiting for news which did not come until almost midnight. The children were tested and reportedly told to wait in the school overnight until the results came out. The students are thought to have been between 7 11 and 12 years of age. This goes to remind us that COVID-19 is still alive within us, more reason why we should be extra careful and continue observing the COVID-19 protocols, and importantly, go get the COVID-19 vaccine jab so that you can protect yourself and your loved ones. Now, former FIFA officials Sepp Blatter and Michael Platini have been charged with fraud and other offences in Switzerland. Swiss prosecutors say Blatter unlawfully arranged a transfer of 2 million Swiss francs to Platini in 2011. Prosecutors say the payment damaged FIFA's assets and unlawfully enriched Platini. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
So, where are we? We're in Kenya. Okay, so there is still some traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, and that's in and outbound around that Imara Daima stretch. Not happening, folks, this morning. Not moving as quickly as you'd like. Sorry, but just be careful. Okay, are you going to South Sea? Are you in South Sea? Are you trying to get into Mombasa Road? Don't. Find somewhere inside there, do some magic out, go towards Ngong Road out. Don't come back to Uhuru Highway because that thing is not happening. Don't say I didn't tell you. The industrial area circuit, Jogo Road, Lunga Lunga, Lusaka, Likoni, that whole square, there's a lot of traffic there this morning. Also looking at it spilling over towards Landis. Hey, Landis. We haven't looked at Landis in a minute. And there's a lot of traffic there getting towards Kamkunji, Haile Selassie, that whole area, total mess. Just understand that we're in the middle of traffic hour and it's happening like madness. Also coming off Thika Superhighway is quite crazy. Kiambu Road also mishmash, bumper to bumper, whatever you want to describe it as this morning. There's a lot of traffic this morning. Okay, where is it happening? The bypasses. Use them. Bypass. How many times did I call your name? 3. Use them. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's keep things moving this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start
7
your
after
day.
8. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to the third hour of the show. It's lovely Wednesday, the 3rd day of November 2021. It continues. Let's hear today's proverb by C.T. Muga.
Wakusha mbombe ikaoka mawe. You have shaken the water until it has become milk.
Taita proverb. Wakusha mbambe
Bombe
ikaoka mawe.
Yes.
Okay. I guess here mawe is water.
It has to be under these circumstances. Maji.
Yeah? Or maybe mawe is milk.
Eric, you ask me with this look in your eyes as though I would know.
Yeah.
I know as much as you do.
When you come here with a proverb, can you come with a complete proverb, knowing exactly what every word means?
Every word
Yes.
means. What you're going to guarantee that I'm going to be, I will ignore the language in which the proverb was first.
You'll be coming with the English version.
Yes,
only.
you ask me, I'll tell you the meaning of everything I've said.
Okay, so the COP26 conversations are taking place in Glasgow, Scotland. And global leaders are gathered there, as they do. This is the 26th time that they're meeting to have this conversation organized by the United Nations to talk about what? Climate change and the impact of climate change and the mitigation measures that countries should take to avert a complete and total disaster. This year, UN Secretary General, in his opening remarks, said, you know what, this is the definitive year. If we do not take action this year, things will just go south. So, more than 100 leaders late on Monday pledged to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by the end of which decade? This decade, by 2030. Underpinned by a 19 billion shilling pledge in private and public funds to invest in protecting and restoring forests. The commitment, which was made at the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow, included countries such as Brazil, Indonesia, and the DRC, which collectively account for the majority of the world's tropical forests. While broadly welcomed, many conservationists have noted that similar zero deforestation pledges have repeatedly been made and not met by both governments and business. Those include the 2014 New York Declaration on Forests, the UN Sustainability Goals, and targets set by the global household brands. While the Glasgow Declaration has an impressive range of signatories from across forest-rich countries, large consumer markets, and financial centers, it nevertheless risks being a reiteration of previous failed commitments and if it lacks teeth. This is according to Joe Blackman, the head of forest policy and advocacy at London-based Global Witness. So many observers are saying, all right, yeah, we are seeing more and more pledges coming. So this one is a pledge on deforestation. India has made a pledge on what it needs to do to bring emissions to a certain percentage. The US has continued talking the way it talks. The UK has spoken. The Queen has sent a message to the global leaders and told them, guys, this time, can we be serious? They have said, yes, ma'am, we hear you. We're going to be very, very serious this time. Are we serious?
Of course we are.
On what?
In making pledges.
The thing is, pledges have to be made. Okay,
it's a starting point.
It is always a good starting point, and it is also a reference point to what ought to be done. Because in the absence of pledges, then what are you talking about?
It would be nice to have an audit, really, of the pledges. This is 26. Right? It would be nice to have an audit of the pledges that have been done over the last, 2 decades or so, and then see how many of those pledges have actually been fulfilled. In the absence of that, what it is just, it seems to be another pledge-making soiree where everybody comes together and it sounds like the nice thing to say and say, oh, yes, right, in the next 10 years, we also as a country have pledged to do 1, 2, or 3 or the other. And so you're rubbing shoulders with the world who's and makes it seem like the sexy thing to do at the moment. It's got to be more than that.
Campaign pledges.
I mean,
no.
Bottom up.
It is a good thing for those pledges to be made. Remember that the presidents make the pledges, then they leave the bureaucrats to now work out the nuts and bolts of what it is they want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the UN has had very many sittings to make decisions on how they can end wars in certain countries, how they can implement certain... My friend, this is the way our world runs. There are always pledges, and then there's a whole list of things that ought to be done, and then every year you then report of a little movement that has been made forward. Then you also talk about how we haven't gained. Then how we talk about how we're on the precipice of absolute disaster as the human race. Those are our discussions. Now the discussions that I don't hear are, all right, good pledge, roadmap, good. But what can you actually do?
Or how can we hold you accountable? What do we do should you not meet what you've pledged?
That one, they will even write it down. And then, since the people who made the pledges are elected leaders in most countries, the next time you have that meeting, that person may not be president.
They'll be out of office.
Or they may not be prime minister. There may not be someone or the other.
But you see, it's not a leader that makes a pledge. It's a country that makes a pledge.
Actually, I wish to differ with you on that one, if I may. It's the leader who makes the pledge.
So we shouldn't be saying that India has made a pledge. You should be saying Narendra Modi has made a pledge.
On behalf of the government
of India. That's why I'm bringing
on behalf of the people. But it is him who has made. For instance, why don't we look at a country like Brazil that actually is one of the biggest lungs that this particular planet has when it comes to what it does for us in terms of its forest cover. Did the president of Brazil, is he at the conference?
The pledges were made.
Precisely. He is visiting his ancestors' home somewhere, I think in Italy. And he has been known to be one of the people who has been at the forefront of clearing forests for farming. He's in for big farming. Him, that's what, when I say the president, I mean it is him.
So, the country of Brazil is among those that signed among this declaration for reforestation and preserving of forests.
Don't you see my point
by
here?
this decade?
Don't you see my point?
It is not Bolsonaro. It is Brazil.
Bolsonaro is the president. He will sign that agreement and then he'll continue clearing forests.
Let's bring in somebody to help us have this conversation. Melita Steele is the interim program director for Greenpeace Africa. She joins us via video link from South Africa. Very good morning to you, Melita.
Hi, good morning. It's good to be here on the show with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Greenpeace has been one of the largest voices in the globe when it comes to issues of climate and climate change and how to preserve our environments. So, just from the reading of what you're seeing happening in Glasgow, what's your immediate reaction to what we see the global leaders saying, what they're committing to, what the pledges that they are now making?
I think as far as Greenpeace is concerned, this COP is a really good opportunity for world leaders and governments to actually show up when it comes to the climate crisis. There's a lot of conversation about the kinds of pledges that are being made, but there's real opportunity for progress at this COP, assuming that governments actually take the climate crisis seriously. We're only a few days into the COP, so it's really hard to really analyze in terms of whether we will actually make measurable progress. But I think the reality is that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released their latest report this year, and they basically called it a code red for humanity. Humans are causing the climate crisis, and we're the only way to stop the climate crisis. And so pledges are not good enough at this stage. And we've been in a situation where pledges have been made before and then have not been followed through. So we're not really in a position to create incremental change. We really have to be taking big, bold steps that phase out fossil fuels very, very quickly, that end exploitation based on the colonial legacy on the African continent, both of our forests and our oceans. And we really have to see the commitment to renewable energy start to take steam.
Melita, why is COP26 an opportunity for these countries to show up as opposed to previous climate conferences? Why would this one specifically be the one where we are saying show up? Is it because the pledges that have been made previously are enough and it's time to see action? Or why this specific one?
So one of the important things about this COP is that countries are coming to them with their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, which is basically each country's specific contribution to stopping the climate crisis. What we found is that those national contributions are inadequate. And so the COP is really a time when pressure can be applied to countries to actually step up what they're prepared to do domestically. It's also quite an important moment in terms of the kinds of money flows that need to happen to try and stop the climate crisis. So at the Paris Agreement in 2015, there was a commitment to $100 billion to go to less developed countries. And that has really not been followed through. So it's an important moment to take stock of what governments are currently committing to, but also recognizing the gap and the need for much more urgent action.
If I may ask, does Greenpeace is Greenpeace involved in the processes of monitoring the activities that countries around the world have taken to continue the process of increasing their forest cover or also reducing gas emissions? Do you keep tabs of countries that are in the process of either doing something positive about this or doing something negative about it?
Yes, so Greenpeace is a global environmental campaigning organization, and we have offices in at least 25 countries around the world. And each of these offices monitor their national governments, what is happening regionally. An example that I can give you is, you mentioned the deforestation pledge, that governments have committed to stop deforestation by 2030. The DRC was mentioned as one of the governments who signed on to that pledge. However, it's important to know that at the same time, the DRC government is talking about lifting a moratorium on logging concessions that has been in place since 2002. So we're tracking what the DRC government, what the Cameroon government are doing in terms of the Congo Basin. So on the one hand, signing a pledge to stop deforestation by 2030, and on the other hand, removing a moratorium that is really critical for protecting the forest.
Did you have examples of countries who have actually positively followed some of these pledges and have reduced just the high levels of gas emissions within their countries and have also increased their forest cover since the last COP?
It's really tricky to see significant progress on a sort of yearly basis based on commitments. One of the governments that has been taking a leading role, especially when the US stepped back from the Paris Agreement, is actually the Chinese government. And we've recently had an announcement from the Chinese government that they're no longer going to finance coal in other countries. They're also really ramping up their renewable energy investments. And that kind of declaration by a country like China can really change the playing field in terms of countries around the world that are looking to finance coal, of which China would have been a big financier, but now would need to start looking at actually the rapid phase out of fossil fuels instead.
One of the groups of people who have been reported to be at this particular conference in very large numbers are green financiers, insurance organizations that deal with green financing, understanding very clearly that an impact on the environment has a very direct impact on matters of finance. Now, when we say, for instance, that China has said it will no longer finance, that, in my opinion, is a good step. But what are they doing about the projects they've already financed? Because the ones which have already been financed and are ongoing are the ones which are contributing to this detrimental increment in gas emissions. So, are they reducing? Because not funding more brings us to a point where we are at a status quo. And the status quo is not good.
Absolutely. So I'd agree with that 100%. The challenge is that there are countries around the world, including countries in Africa, South Africa, Kenya itself, who are planning to build new coal-fired power stations. That is in the face of the climate science, which is incredibly clear that we cannot afford any new fossil fuels. So one step forward is to close the tap in terms of money for fossil fuel projects. Another step forward is for those governments that do have fossil fuels in their countries to start rapidly phasing out those fossil fuels. And the money flows are quite critical in terms of that. So in terms of do you have money to build the fossil fuel projects that you're already investing in is a big question. And do you have the money to phase out? So there's been quite a big agreement that was made recently, I think it was yesterday, between South Africa and a few European countries to actually help the country phase out of coal. So there's new investments in fossil fuels. There's existing fossil fuel projects under construction, and then there's the phase out. And you need to do a phase out from fossil fuels in a just transition. You need to be putting workers at the center, and we really need money flows to actually enable that, and we need governments who are firmly committed to action on the climate crisis.
Marita, when I hear these conversations about phasing out those that are already generating huge amounts of power using fossil fuel and stopping anybody else from even thinking and contemplating, I look at just unfairness in the world. This is completely wrong and immoral. Look, if a country is already using fossil fuel to generate power, and then you're talking about phasing out, you're not talking about phasing out in 2-3 years, you're talking about phasing out in decades. And then another country, small country that already has 80% of its power coming from renewable sources, and saying we want to have about 2% of our power, which 2% is a 0.0 something percent of the power in another big country, saying we'd like to come up with coal, and you say, don't even think about it. What's right? And yet, those countries are making those global pledges, saying, all right, so we're going to have, some funds that can help you develop in green energy. Those funds are not forthcoming. This is the big players trying to stop development in the undeveloped world.
I think it's really important to be looking at our pathway to energy independence and energy security, especially on the African continent. And we have some of the best renewable energy resources in the world on the African continent. Obviously, it differs from country to country. But really what we need is governments who are taking the climate crisis seriously, who are not waiting for money to appear out of nowhere, but are actually investing in clean renewable energies. And there are differentials between different countries, but the reality with the climate crisis is that it affects everyone. We're all on the front line. We're all already living with the impacts of the climate crisis.
That's agreed. So what is it that the big players are doing then to stop this fast enough? If you're talking about the big players who are using all these harmful means to produce their energy, committing to take 10, 15, 20 years to stop doing this, they own the technology that would help the smaller countries, the African countries, to develop their green energy. We want to develop green energy. We have vast resources in the country to tap the solar, to tap wind, to tap geothermal, but we don't own the technology. Those that own the technology are the polluters. How do we balance this out?
Actually, in my opinion, Eric, you know how it's balanced out. These so-called renewable energies, other countries can also invest in them. But the unfortunate thing is what we now call the great emitters of these gases, when you talk about, you're now talking about big business. You're talking about big industry. And to change is cost. Now, if you look at countries where they have perhaps reduced the usage of some of these fossil fuels, it's because the other technologies we refer to have also increased. So coal has become less competitive. So it isn't as though they suddenly decide they're going to drop. No. They have alternatives which work better, and coal is simply dropping in demand because there are other alternatives.
Yes.
Now, where I'm in full agreement with you is that this is not only unfair, it's hypocritical and it's nonsensical. Even if a country like Kenya were to use coal, it is a minuscule quantity in terms of what emissions it will produce compared to the people who actually are responsible for this discussion about greenhouse gases.
And who are still contributing
using
coal.
They still are. All they're saying is they're not increasing their production, and they're not investing in new. And there is talk of reduction. Now, that talk of reduction is talk.
We're also not taking into consideration how much of it was actually used to run entire economies for a very long period of time.
150 years.
And to develop to the level where they are at now, that they can even invest in developing new technologies for renewable energy.
They don't seem to think it's important for them to do that because this one already makes money. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that's one of the big debates in the COP negotiations. We've touched on a couple of things here. The one is the technology So this is something that the African countries, other countries on the front lines of the climate crisis are really trying to negotiate hard in terms of releasing some of the patents and the technology around renewable energy. And that's a key area. The reality is that developed countries have developed on the back of fossil fuels. That's very clear. I mean, if you look at the historical responsibility for creating the climate crisis, that's on the back of the European Union, the US, those major developed countries that have fully exploited fossil fuels. However, even if we acknowledge that that is the reality, and we must acknowledge that people on the African continent do not bear the historical responsibility for causing the climate crisis. Nonetheless, we all need to make a fair contribution to stopping the climate crisis, and that's what's under debate. And so even if a coal-fired power station in Kenya, which is being proposed in Lamu, seems like a small contribution, you have to look at its contribution to the climate crisis. You also have to look at its contribution to pollution, damaging people's health. So there's a range of negative side effects from fossil fuels that every single fossil fuel project contributes to. And Greenpeace strongly believes that we have the resources in renewable energy. And it's absolutely possible for African countries to leapfrog over dirty development and into a cleaner future based on renewable energy.
We'd like to hear some of those ideas that Greenpeace has in the next half of the show. Let's take a break at this point, 8:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, live on SpiceFM, on KTN Home and online. Melita Steele is the interim program director for Greenpeace Africa. We are talking about climate conversations off the back of the ongoing COP26 talks in Glasgow, Scotland. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislators are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality.
We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi la Wokovu is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
In
day.
Nairobi, we're looking at cloudy conditions at going to highs of 26 and lows of 15 today. It will be sunny at some point, 26 and mostly sunny in Nakuru, and that will be the high today, coming down to lows of 15. 14 will be the low in Nyeri, where it's raining at 24. It'll go to highs of 25. Mostly cloudy conditions at 19 in Eldoret, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Mostly cloudy conditions at 30 Mombasa, highs of 31 and lows of 25. And we're looking at sunny conditions at 30 in Malindi, highs of 31 and lows of 26. In Kisumu, it's mostly cloudy at 19, highs of 27 and lows of 18. And we're looking at Kakamega, mostly cloudy conditions at 19, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 19, highs of 25 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is cloudy at 30, highs of 31 and lows of 25. Sunny conditions at 17 in Johannesburg, highs of 29 and lows of 14. Lagos is mostly clear at 24. It'll go to highs of 32, back down to lows of 24. It's 23 and raining in Kinshasa, highs of 31 and lows of 23. Is it getting any better? No, it's not. We're still in the middle of traffic hour this morning, and that entire circuit of industrial area is an absolute mishmash of traffic. Aerodrome Road, terrible, like you've never seen it before. Really packed as you're coming off Langata Road, trying to get towards the Huru Highway. The whole of Langata Road, inbound, outbound, feeding off from South Sea, which had that issue today, still does, as you're trying to connect with the Huru Highway, coming off Mombasa Road as well. Bumper to bumper. All jam and no butter this morning. It is not happening. We're also looking at that whole Langata area, jam-packed this morning, coming out of Westlands, Kileleshwa, State House, Lavington, moving towards Muthangari, out then onto Waiyaki Way. Absolute mess. So you want some reprieve? Get on to the Red Hill Link Road and use that as an option to get into the city. Don't say I didn't. They'll tell you. You will thank me later. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Other parts of the city where you might be stuck, let us know. Text as well on 40127.
Everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 25 minutes to 9. This is Conversation, the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website www.spicefm.co.ke. We are talking about the climate talks that are taking place in Glasgow, Scotland. World leaders, business leaders, and civil society organizations are gathered in Glasgow to talk about climate change. COP26 talks, pledges being made, progress being reviewed and audited, and then plans on what needs to happen. In the studio with you this morning is Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, and CT Muga. And joining us on the line is Melita Steele, the Interim Program Director for Greenpeace Africa. As we were taking the break, Melita, you said Greenpeace, for example, is really convinced that Africa, it's possible for Africa not to go the fossil fuel route, but to use renewable energy and leapfrog the developed world in terms of meeting its energy needs and also its development needs. What are some of those things that Africa could do?
Yeah, I think it's really important that the world cannot continue to consider Africa as the new frontier for extraction and exploitation. And as countries in the global north start shifting away from fossil fuels, that they start eyeing the African continent as a place of extraction. We have to actually find a way to undo the colonial legacy of exploitation on the continent. And one of the best ways to do that is actually to utilize what we have on the continent. And we're very lucky to have the kinds of renewable energy resources that we do have on the continent. And that ranges from solar to wind to geothermal to offshore wave energy. There are a number of different options around renewable energy that exist on the continent. And essentially what needs to happen is that we need to be harnessing the maximum potential of our renewable energy. We have significant problems when it comes to electricity access on the continent, just as a base bottom line. And in fact, the reality that renewable energy is decentralized means that it's actually much better suited to delivering electricity where it's needed, whether that's in urban areas or whether that's in more rural areas. And so we are seeing some governments starting to take up renewable energy as a really important element of their energy production. But it requires governments to fully get behind the potential of renewable energy and to invest heavily and support the uptake of renewable energy across the continent.
So what would this entail? I mean, all those things that you're talking about are things that I see being done across Africa. Use of renewable energy, just homes looking at how to use solar for basic energy needs. countries investing in how to tap the renewable sources of energy, like you've said, solar, wind, and geothermal for the case of Kenya, for instance. But then all these things, as you say, require some kind of investment. So what is it that is hindering then the African countries from getting to invest in them? Is it not lack of the fact that you are not yet developed enough, so that if you dedicate a huge chunk of your budgets into this renewable energy where you don't own the technology, you're buying the technology, you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot?
I think a lot depends on how you structure your local renewable energy market. So we're definitely seeing, so I started working for Greenpeace in 2009. Renewable energy wasn't even something that people spoke about at that stage. So we're 12 years later, and renewable energy is something that people recognize, that they use if they can afford. But if you just look at your own home, the upfront costs in terms of investing in solar panels are quite significant.
Yes.
And so what we need is local banks to start coming to the party. I mean, you get a home loan. So there are multiple ways that local banks could be supporting renewable energy uptake much more significantly. Mm-hmm. And then basically we need to scale it up. So we don't just need investments in renewable energy at an individual level. We need the kinds of scaled up projects that can deliver to cities and to countries. And that requires commitment from the government, supportive structures in place, so an enabling marketplace or system, and also trade flows between countries. So renewable energy in one country can supply another country as well.
Which is where I'm bringing in the conversation about, in fact, you called it that colonial structure. So, for example, in this region, renewable energy, yes, has not been a buzzword, but our electricity has been renewable for the longest we can remember. We've been using hydro as our source of energy. Then we've gone into solar, we've gone into geothermal, we have wind power projects in the country. The issue, though, is on the ownership of technology, Melita. And this is why I'm just keep pushing back on that the owners of technology are developed, and they developed using fossil fuel. So yes, let's not look at their historical scenes. Let's see that they have acknowledged, and they are not stopping to use the dirty fuels. They're just committing to reduce the use of dirty fuel over the next couple of decades. And these African countries that have been at the forefront of championing and using renewable energy anyway don't have access to the technology. Should the conversation not be, as you say, you are pledging, you're doing A, B, C, D, make these patents available to these African countries so that they can develop? Should this not be the push that we get from organizations such as Greenpeace? Technology
is definitely one of the core issues in terms of the climate crisis. And these negotiations have been ongoing. This is the 26th year that these negotiations are happening. I think if you even just look at the COVID pandemic, the issues around patents are so much around profits over people. So even in the face of a global pandemic, releasing the patents to actually produce vaccines in countries where the vaccine was not developed seems impossible. So just because it seems impossible does not mean we shouldn't be pushing for it. We should absolutely be pushing for patents to be released, technology transfers to be enabled. We can also be pushing for local ownership as part of renewable energy projects. So different countries have different ways of measuring that, but you make sure that it's not just a project that is funded by a company in the EU, for example. But ideally, countries in Africa would be able to have access to the patents and be able to use that to deliver renewable energy technology at scale.
The negotiation of some of these things, I think, then, is what a lot of focus then needs to be. There seems to already be a set agenda upon which then people will focus. There's a set agenda upon then which the conversation will be had. Reduce here, argue on this particular point, have negotiations on this particular area, whereby the things that hurt everybody, at least in uniformity, for example, on the African continent, seems to take a back seat. So in terms of negotiation, shouldn't we have some more focus then when it comes to negotiation of some of these things? When we're talking about development, still in the face of climate change, and that development needs to happen. Some of the other countries that are part of this conversation, their development does not come to a standstill either. In fact, they're negotiating based on the fact that their development must continue, right? So should we not be talking about a more forceful negotiation on the part of African countries, for example, for whom are being asked to do certain things, almost traded for development?
Yeah, I think the power dynamics in the negotiations are really critical to reflect on. So there is a strong negotiating bloc in the COP negotiations, which is called the G77 in China. And that is African countries and the least developed countries as well, trying to negotiate as a bloc. But there is no doubt that the power and authority that a country like the US exerts in these kinds of international negotiations is significant. But we're starting to see the geopolitics start to change in terms of the red lines for countries who are facing the worst impacts of climate crisis. I think a lot of the problem is also on how technical these questions are. So, I mean, most people would not even have thought about the patents related to renewable energy. Never mind how can that be applied in your own country. People just want access to electricity. And so part of the problem with the negotiations is that they happen at a very high technical level, that people have a problem accessing what is really going on in the negotiations. And just to reflect on that, the deforestation pledge, in terms of how Greenpeace has looked at it, that seems like just another decade to allow deforestation to happen around the world. It's not enforceable. And so we're in a situation where the negotiations are technical, pledges are being made that are not enforceable and that are incremental. And so really what we need to see is people power, is people standing up and calling their governments to account and saying, we really cannot live with the climate crisis and we need urgent action domestically and internationally.
There's something that I find a little disturbing about this discussion on climate change, greenhouse gas emissions and so forth, and the discomfort is here. Every time a discussion of this nature is had, there are these aspirational perspectives that are always presented. This ought to happen. And yet, the key players in this discussion are never discussed. Big industry, big business. We talk about governments. Now, governments don't run coal factories. Governments don't run some of these huge industries that we are huge consumers of fossil fuels. The production of fossil fuel itself isn't something that is run by governments. It is private enterprise. Now, at what point are the people who are fundamentally responsible, because the government has policies, makes it possible for these people to do business. At what point are these key players ever involved in this discussion? Because so long as the key element in their perspective is how much money they will make for themselves and for the shareholders of whichever organization they have, the governments will make statements such as the one we're hearing in Glasgow. There'll be aspirations that organizations such as yours have, but I don't think we will make very much progress if the people who are at the heart of it are not involved. So how do you involve big business?
I think that ultimately big business are involved from the beginning. One of the biggest challenges is the very, very close relationship between government and big business. So even before a government would go to the COP negotiations, they would usually have some kind of stakeholder engagement nationally. And those national consultations are often including the biggest companies, the biggest energy users, the biggest fossil fuel companies. And what that means is that we often get to the lowest common denominator when it gets to the negotiations. In some cases, you even have representatives from fossil fuel corporations on national negotiating teams in the COP negotiations. So as far as Greenpeace is concerned, there's definitely no concern that business is being underrepresented in terms of this. What we would say is that, in fact, governments have such a close relationship to corporations and to the profit motive that they will usually go in the direction that companies, fossil fuel companies, forest exploitation companies, ocean exploitation companies want them to go in. And so, in fact, what's needed is a break, that we break that relationship between governments and big business so that governments are more free to make commitments that are actually in the interest of the people in the countries that they live in. And it's actually time that big business exerted far less influence over the COP negotiations, and that government started to hold big business accountable for the kinds of shift in their business model that must align with 1.5 degrees global warming.
Melita, is there any monitoring framework that's in place for all these climate conversations to say that this is one organization that's under the auspices of the United Nations that does the monitoring of what every country is doing? Like what we see with the nuclear arms conversations. There is the IEA, there is the non-test agency. Do we have something like this for nuclear, for climate?
I think the best thing that we have is the UN negotiations themselves, which keep track of the commitments that different countries have made. The other sort of international collaboration around climate is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And what that is international climate scientists who are analyzing the data, looking at what governments are currently doing to try and map out different trajectories for us to go on. So I talked just now about a 1.5 degree alignment. So according to climate science, we really need to align with 1.5 degrees to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. But there are other possibilities. We could land up with global warming that is 3 degrees, 5 degrees. And what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change does is they analyze those different trajectories and give us information based on the kinds of decisions that governments are making. What's clear at the moment is that we're not on a pathway to 1.5 degrees. So the kinds of commitments are inadequate.
Is there a case for establishment of an independent body that monitors not just the pledges, but the actual emissions per country? That says, so when every country comes and says, you know what, our emissions this year had come down to this and the other, and our contributions are going now to be reducing to this, and there's actually a body, an independent body, that monitors and gives a report and says, this country we have noticed this and the other either contributed directly or indirectly. And then looking against their own pledges at such talks and saying they pledged that by this time they ought to have been at this point, and indeed they are, or they have surpassed the target, or they have really fallen short of the target. In fact, we have noticed that they did not even make any move towards the target. Is there a case for such an organization?
I think there may be. I mean, there are definitely different ways of looking at measuring emissions, and I think we have a well-established framework that emissions are measured within. So we're clear about who the biggest emitters are and what their emissions are. But the challenges come in terms of reducing those emissions and measuring the reduction or increase. And I think that's where the reliance on national governments comes in. And there's definitely space to be looking at that with a much more critical eye, because we need to be reducing emissions and we need to be doing it quickly.
Do you realistically see a situation where we will live in a world that is actually run by renewable resources and that they are dangerous gas emission free, and that people will actually get to a point where when they make commitments, they will actually live up to it? Do you foresee such a situation?
That kind of world is absolutely possible. So we're at a very important time right now where so much time has been lost debating, is the climate crisis real? Did humans create the climate crisis? And those questions are settled now, but we've wasted time actually getting there. There is no doubt that a combination of renewable energy and energy efficiency can power the world, can power the kinds of needs that we have globally. But it's a global effort. So it doesn't help if, Germany decides to go 100% renewable energy and countries like Nigeria or the US remain heavily invested in fossil fuels. We all need to be looking at this as a collective crisis that can affect us in a range of ways. So, we haven't really talked about the impacts of climate change. But just in Kenya itself, you've got a really significant drought that's happening at the moment. Food security starts to come into risk. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report indicated that sea level rise might be actually worse than already predicted. Agricultural zones are changing due to the climate crisis. So we're in it. We're living with the reality of the climate crisis right now. And what that means is that we collectively need to recognize that every single government, every single business, every single person needs to be taking the climate crisis seriously and acting to create that kind of future. And if we do, it's absolutely achievable. But I think the point that was made about how we don't have time to waste is really, really important. This is not something that we want our children or our grandchildren to be living with, because the world will become uninhabitable. We really need to strive for a renewable energy-based future.
Melita, we thank you very much for speaking to us. Melita Steele is the Interim Program Director at Greenpeace Africa. We've been live on KTN Home, and time for us to say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home. Switch over for the conversations on SpiceFM or online, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
Yes,
Nairobi.
it continues into the next hour. So the whole conversation about, climate change and everything that's taking place. Yes, Grido Jaka says all indicators are that it's more talk than action. Recent floods in Europe and Asia, wildfires in the US and Australia, more hurricanes hitting the US and Asia, etc. The biggest polluters, that's the US and China, did not sign up to the Kyoto Protocol. We are overproductive and over-consuming. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. The conversation continues into the next hour. We thank you very much for tuning in every weekday morning. Our numbers, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Or you can contribute to the conversations by posting a message or comment on Twitter, SpiceFMKE, on Facebook, SpiceFMKE, or Instagram, SpiceFMKE. A very good morning to you. It's now 9 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire Dennis Asset. The British ambassador to Kenya, Jane Marriott, is today expected to visit Laikipia County, where the British military trains. The visit comes as the British government continues to be asked to take action against the British soldier who allegedly killed a 21-year-old woman, Agnes Wanjiru, 9 years ago. It is reported that Marriott will be accompanied by Defence CSE General Malo, with the county administration insisting that they will continue to push for justice. Pamalo appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Defence and Foreign Affairs, defending the government against allegations that it had not taken the matter seriously.
There is no such cover-up. Probably there might have been a delay, and that we must own up. So we have the necessary legal and institutional framework to deal with this matter because of that agreement.
Agnes Wanjiru's body was found inside a septic tank in 2012 as reports emerged that she had been killed by one of the British soldiers in Nanyuki, Laikipia County. Meanwhile, the Nanyuki court later this month is expected to rule on whether British troops can be convicted by a local court. Now, Kenya is expected to achieve 100% clean energy efficiency by 2030. Speaking at an ongoing COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland, President Uhuru Kenyatta said per hour Kenya had reached between 73 and 90% of various clean energy consumption. Kenyatta also took the opportunity to list the steps Kenya has taken in connecting Kenyans to electricity, saying the rate has increased from 30% to 70% over the past 9 years. He also told the conference, which brings together leaders from around the world, about investing in wind energy into the Kano region, which contributes about 10,000 megawatts.
Kenya is a pace setter in the energy sector. We are among the top 8 global leaders in geothermal power development and home to the largest wind power projects on the African continent. Currently, close to 90% of the electricity used by Kenyans is from renewable energy sources, and we plan to achieve 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is doing her fair share. Let me, however, hasten to add that these are mere baby steps relative to the enormity of the climate change challenge.
World record holder in the long-distance race, Eliud Kipchoge, who is the ambassador for environmental impact, is among those who attended the conference. Now, still on matters climate change and China's carbon emissions are vast and growing, dwarfing those of other countries. Experts agree that without big reductions in China's emissions, the world cannot win the fight against climate change. In 2020, China's President Xi Jinping said its country would aim for its emissions to reach the highest point before 2030 and for carbon neutrality before 2060. His statement has now been confirmed as China's official position ahead of the COP26 Global Climate Summit in Glasgow. But China has not said exactly how these goals will be achieved. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has criticized the leaders of China and Russia for not turning up to the COP26 Climate Summit. He said climate was a gigantic issue and China walked away, adding that it was the same thing with Russia and Putin. Neither Russia President Vladimir Putin nor Chinese leader Xi Jinping are at the summit. Now, Kenya recorded 70 new COVID-19 cases Tuesday from a sample size of 5,755 tested in the last 24 hours. The country's positivity rate is at 1.2%. The total number of confirmed cases in Kenya now stands at 253,409 from a cumulative test of 2,714,255 conducted thus far. And Baringo Senator Gideon Moi is expected to take over the chairmanship of the Senate Security Committee. Yesterday, Moi was approved and sat on the Committee on National Security and Foreign Affairs, giving the opportunity to be elected chairman of the committee. For more than 2 months, there have been tensions in the Senate from members of various other House committees, which crippled functions of the House, with Moi's approval facing opposition from some members of the committee. It should be noted that the committee was being chaired by Kisumu Senator Fred Outa following the death of former Garissa Senator Yusuf Haji. Now, health officers in West Pokot County are expected to assess the mysterious illness that has plagued Chesawach Primary School students in Baringo County. Tirioko Ward Representative Sam Locales said the students who were allowed to stay at home showed different symptoms, with some vomiting, having red eyes, blue eyes, and other symptoms. Locales criticized the Baringo County leadership in general for failing to intervene in matters affecting the lives of the people with the urgency required. He said the Red Cross had heard his call but said they were looking forward to the county health ministry to go to the area and investigate the problem. And 5 people died when a cargo plane carrying fuel for the UN World Food Program crashed near South Sudan's capital Juba. The aircraft, a Soviet-era Antonov AN-26 transport plane, crashed shortly after taking off from Juba's international airport, killing everyone on board. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
Spice FM, Nairobi.
Haile Selassie, my goodness. Haile Selassie has decided today she will rule because there's a lot of traffic there. It's coming off of Ngong Road. It's also coming down from that community area, feeding off of Landis. And then everybody now joins Haile Selassie Avenue today. And there's in and outbound traffic. So you can imagine that combined with what's coming off of Hulu Highway, combined with what's coming out of Westlands, it's an absolute mess. Ngong Road, inbound, also quite a lot of drama there today. Mombasa Road, that has been suffering from jam all this week, is smiling at all of you saying, I once was there. I know what you feel like. The Thika Superhighway also hot and heavy, still coming from Survey. Kiambu Road looking a lot better now, but coming off Muthaiga Square, then going towards the city, still some traffic. Westlands, still same old, trudging along with that traffic. And the Red Hill Link Road did what it could for you earlier this morning. At least now the traffic has dulled down a little bit. It's not too bad. Still looking at that situation though. And we'll keep you abreast of issues as we go through. Help us out as well on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
8 minutes after
the
9.
Only way to
How you doing? This is the 4th hour of the show this morning. It's a lovely Wednesday. It's the 3rd day of the 11th month of this 21st year of this decade. No, the 21st year of this century. Yeah, it's the 2nd year of the decade. City, today's tighter proverb.
Yes. Wakusha mbombe ikaoka mawe.
Wakusha bombe ikaoka
Ikaoka
I think
mawe.
Wakusha is shake.
Mawe.
Mawe. Ikaoka.
Mawe. Toleka. It is Taita, not Lingala proverb. What does it mean in English?
Right. You have shaken the water until it has become milk.
Washuka.
You have shaken the water. Ati washuka.
What did you say?
You have shaken.
Washuka.
What did you say?
Washuka bomba. Ikawaka mawe.
Why don't I just limit
Just
myself
don't worry.
to the interpretation in the English language?
Washuka mbembe ikawaka mawe.
Yes. Ikaoka, ikaka mawe. You have shaken the water until it has become milk.
Right.
Yes.
That is the proverb of the day. A very interesting one from the Taita. So there's continue the conversation. First of all, the announcement. You've heard it on the news, and let's just go over it again. The IEBC released a statement last night. Remember, on the 1st of November, that's on Monday, the High Court in Eldoret had issued orders prohibiting the Commission from closing the national voter registration exercise that was to end yesterday. Now, the IEBC seized of the matter. They had internal conversations. They said, if we just go ahead and implement this court order and continue, there'll be serious ramifications, even in terms of our planning, our budgets and all. We are going to appeal. So they filed an appeal, and they're going to court today. They moved the appeal yesterday. They're going to court today to argue this. But they said, in the interim, going with the court order from Monday, we will extend the voter registration exercise, this rapid voter registration exercise, until this case is determined. So the rapid voter registration exercise is going on. They were targeting to net 6 million people by end of yesterday. They had only gotten about 2 million people by end of yesterday. There were 1 point something million people by end of yesterday. They were short by more than 4 million voters in the target. Majority of this audience is in the youth demographic, and this is people in the ages of 18 to 35, who, that was the captive market that they were going for. Only 1.8 or 1 point something million, you'll confirm as you continue, are the ones that did what? Turned up to register. When we were having this conversation last week, and we were saying, so what is it? What could be hampering? A number of people called in and they raised some serious concerns. Number one, where is information being shared? The information is largely being shared on media, but also suppressed publicity around this time. Where is this captive market mostly to be found? On digital platforms. How many digital campaigns have been run to actually reach the people where they are? And this is the youth, to let them know that this is where you can go and register. You can actually walk there and register yourself. Their conversation even went further and said, engage the youth on social media, find a way for them to register on social media, on digital platforms. Is it possible for you to register people on digital platforms? So right now, where we are stuck at is because we're using biometric registration. So you've got to go in and do your thumbs like this and your fingers like the other, so that now your details are captured. Biometric details are captured. How else can you register the young people? Let's extend this conversation a bit further. So we've been talking about youth not being active participants in governance in this country. That's a conversation that, the youth are disinterested. The youth are not turning up in meetings when you have public participation fora. How many of them are actually the youth? The youth are not engaging directly or indirectly. The youth are not coming out to present themselves for positions of leadership. Some of those are actually fallacies. A majority of the MCAs that we have in this country are people below 35. That is number one, fact on paper. It's there. A majority of the people who are MCAs are below 35. Now, a majority of the voters in the next election are likely going to be the youth, because the majority of Kenya's population is people below 35. Are the youth engaged? If you go onto social media, there's something that's called KOT and all. Are the youth engaged? Are the youth consuming information on politics? Are they not? A couple of weeks back, we reviewed a story. A young girl had posted on social media and said, my father has been ailing and my family has been stretched to the limit in terms of just footing the medical bills. I'd like you guys to come in and support our family. What happened? Backlash. Why? Because of who her father is. And her father is a former member of parliament from Mount Elgon, and people just dug up into history using digital platforms and said, look who this person is and you're telling us to support them. We will not. So there was a lot of conversation on social media about the former MP John Serut and his alleged involvement in whatever has happened in Mount Elgon over many years. Are the youth involved? There we have one example. Another example on the issue of debt. The World Bank announces that, with IMF, so we have these conversations. We've had the conversations with the government of Kenya, and this is what's going to happen. The National Treasury releases a statement, and people on Twitter go out there. And what do? They raise concerns and say, if you're giving us more money, that is burdening us with more debt. Are they informed? I can say they're informed. Are they engaged? I can say they're engaged. Have they turned up to some public hall, social hall in Nairobi to engage? No, they haven't. Have they turned up in some social hall somewhere to engage? Yes, they have. Have they not, City?
They have.
So youth are active, but they're active in other platforms. Those who are running government, those who are thinking about government, are thinking about government in a different platform. When we say the Constitution actually recognizes the power of digital media, when it says that there shall be public participation on almost every decision that's made, the mandate then is passed on to the national government and the county governments to develop platforms that shall include digital platforms to reach out to the population. How many county governments have digital tools that can be used for public participation, for discussion, for conversation about any matter? Let's talk about the budget-making cycle. Let's talk about any bill that's being discussed in the county assembly. How many governments in the counties have a tool that can be used adequately and effectively to have these conversations? Is it that we have a disconnect between those that are running government and they're thinking that, when we say meeting, people have to come into a certain room and meet and talk. When we say voting, people have to queue somewhere and cast a paper ballot into a bin which shall later be counted. And yet the youth are thinking differently. Youth are engaging in other platform which is their future and their modern.
Or their current.
Yes, their current.
It's their current. It's their everyday engagement is what we're talking about here. So I think I would say that's the perfect word to use. And maybe a complete inconsideration of what is actually happening. Here are the people that you are saying, it's like this thing is moving in this direction, but you're not actually looking at the tools that you need to actually have it done. You're saying that the people that you want to engage with the most, or you're saying that those that you want to engage with this thing called an election the most are the young people. But you're not taking into consideration the tools that they're using to engage with their entire lives on a daily basis. Or you're not saying, where are they? You're assuming that because you've put out this information that they're going to come running to you. Well, gone are the times where that happens. Young people are no longer running to a thing. That those that are inventing these new and innovative ways of doing things are actually the ones going to them. That they are making it or they're adapting to them and the current state of operation. How are we buying and selling? How are we learning? How are we engaging? It's digital now. And it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in Nairobi or you can be wherever you are. The operation and the communication is digital, right? There are ways in which young people are doing things. There are ways in which youth are doing things today that they did not do them 20 years ago. So, is it necessary to change with the times? To take into consideration that the people that you are trying to target are operating in a different fashion from the way in which you used to. So take that into consideration. if you don't do that, then I'm actually not surprised at this 1.3 million that you got when you were expecting 6.
You know, when you talk of the word, when you use the word disconnect, in my youthful days, there are certain terminologies that I came across, but there's one which explained to me at that particular point in time an understanding of how differences come about. And it was called a generational gap. Now, it's very broad, but I have found it explains very many things. Meaning, you could be talking at cross purposes. The subject matter is the same. However, because of your generational understanding of that particular subject, even when someone is saying the same thing as you, but they have infused their generational perspective of it, you actually think that the person has a new idea or has an idea that's contrary to yours, and yet it isn't contrary to yours. When somebody who is youthful says that they're looking for engagement or a job, where do you think they're most likely to express this view? When they meet someone or in a forum where they're constantly engaging with each other?
Yep. It's in their natural habitat.
Yes.
It's where they're likely
it
to
has
be.
to be the natural habitat.
Yeah.
Yes. So the question that one asks is, are we saying that those who are not in that bracket of the youthful and who are in positions of authority, are we saying that they are incapable of understanding these nuances? Are we saying that perhaps they are deliberately not engaging in these because then it puts them at a disadvantage? Because many people who don't fall in that category of the youth are not very conversant or literate, or they are not. Yes,
with this new ways of communication.
No. It's a bit disturbing, and there are too many.
It's not comfortable terrain.
Yes,
definitely it isn't.
There's too many things happening there
at the same time.
Yes,
but it's interesting that you say that, because at the same time, when they want to make these announcements, they're going to the same places.
What they do is they employ people.
They employ the young people,
right, to go to those places.
Their rallies.
Yes.
So they understand the importance of it.
Yes,
but clearly they
don't want to embrace it.
So now, when you use the word deliberate, then it makes sense, because it would seem as though, and I keep telling you, you know this thing exists, you understand the importance of it, but you won't engage there because it's not a priority, really.
Yeah,
it's a priority in word, but it's not a priority in deed. Because if you were really interested in getting these people in this bracket to do what you are saying that you are interested in them doing, you would see more activity there. To me, it is not difficult to understand, Eric.
It's clear to see.
It is very clear to see that if you are very interested in engaging, you know that they're there.
I think the challenge, as you've said, is you can see, but you just don't understand this platform.
Yes, you don't know how do I work it.
You don't want to engage much because you don't really understand. You know, I want to just put it out there now as the question, okay? Should voting be made digital in Kenya? Vote electronically from your mobile device and you cast your ballot. And we move this thing of telling people wake up at 6 a.m., go, poll stations have opened, poll stations have closed. There's a likelihood of violence, of people throwing stones at each other, of police coming, of some rogue people who've been sent by some politician. Avoid it all. Vote from the comfort of your home on your mobile device. Can we go there? Should we be pushing that? Because it is possible. The other day, the Cabinet Secretary for Information formed a task force to understand blockchain. Because the Cabinet Secretary for Information knows he's been a player in the IT sector for a long time. In fact, he's a pioneer player in the IT sector. Joe Mushero, before he joined Google and others, he was among the first investors in what was, remember, Wananchi Online? The first ISPs in this country, before people knew what this was.
He understands intimately.
He was there, right? He understands. So he saw blockchain is moving and we have all these things. Can we get a team to look at blockchain and tell us what possibilities can we use with blockchain? What does blockchain do? It creates and enhances security. Today, many people are transacting their bank accounts on their phones. You get into your account, you transfer money from the account, to your mobile device, or you transfer money from your account to somebody else's account on your mobile phone. How does the bank know that that was Ndu and not Eric?
They've got your digital footprint.
There you go.
Right.
So they already have your information, and they'll even tell you, even if you're going online, they'll send you a one-time password, which is just for verification. There's multi-step verification as you do this. We can do the same with our EBC. So this is CT Muga. They have sent you your OTPs and told you, log on, vote. Who's your MCA? Who's your MP? Who's your woman rep? Who's your governor? Who's your senator? Who's your MP? Who's your president? Click
and your
submit.
registration details are the first things that you see up there. Voter ID, registration ID, boom, go.
And those who like to wake up early in the morning so that they can form long queues.
You can still
wake up in the morning and go and form long queues.
Yes.
If you need to see the building.
Yes.
and chill and chat with others.
And chat with others
on
and
the
discuss
queue.
the weather. And
all those things. But we have a call on the line. Anthony has been on the line for a while from Mombasa. Good morning.
Good morning, my people.
Good morning, Anthony.
Yeah, what I wanted to emphasize is, you are beating around the bush, you people concerned with the media.
Why?
The reason why the youths are not taking part, are not active in politics, is because they are being left out every time they are being told, youth, you are the leaders of tomorrow, youth, you are leaders of tomorrow. And they are almost aging. At 35 years of age, you are being still promised that you are the leader of tomorrow. But when you get into the ring of that political arena, you are being told that maybe you are a project of someone, you are being used by someone, or you are being used to derail someone's candidature. I want to give you a good, clear example. When you are a youth from a particular region, you are being seen as someone who has a voting right to a particular person. You are not being seen as someone who can speak his own mind. You see? For example, I'm a Luo. But when I approach my fellow Luos that I am running for MCA of the Walangombe ward in Nyeri constituency, I'm being seen by my fellow Luos as a traitor. I should go with ODM. And you know very well that that party even defeated very big people with their money, like former MP of Nyeri, Awiti. You see, that is just an example. Another person from Central who wants to stand with a different party, he's being seen as either a traitor or a spoiler.
Okay.
If this person wants to grow politically, and he's actually a youth, but he's being, twisted and being rubbed in this way and left, right, and center. So you need the person who wanted to vote for him will say, okay, they have said that you are a spoiler.
Anthony.
Yes.
Anthony.
Yes.
So when you speak to the youthful voters that you'd like to vote for you,
yes,
are they engaging? Are they the ones who are looking at you as a Luo who's a traitor, or are they listening to you as somebody who can make a change?
They are viewing me as someone of their level, and in fact, many people have been motivated even to go and register. I have quite a number of them. Imagine.
So then you're mixing the conversation here, Anthony.
Yes.
Because on the one hand, you're saying that the youth are not interested, and then on the other hand, you're saying the youth are interested.
Youths are only interested when they are seeing someone of their level is also actively participating in voting.
Okay.
But you know the wrong thing, we are getting it wrong somewhere. That when the young people who are upcoming politicians are being thwarted, their ambitions are being thwarted, then their interest is also fading.
Anthony, there's something here we need to consider, even as we listen to you and as you say what you're saying. Yeah?
Yes.
Either the youth can get into politics with the view to bringing about change, in which case they'll meet very strong headwind.
Well,
and even if they want to go with the norm that we consider to be part and parcel of our political process, they will still meet headwinds. It is the terrain that politics provides. So to expect that there will be no resistance, to expect that there are people who will not second guess you, perhaps one should not then go into politics. One should choose something else.
And that's why, Anthony, in the conversation today, we're looking at How do we change this field?
We can change it. It is possible.
So let me ask you the
It is
direct question,
possible.
because that's our focus then this morning, Anthony. Should voting be made digital?
Yeah. Voting cannot be made digital because our democratic space has not reached that standard where we trust anyone. For example, almost every time if you apply work online, you will not be contacted. Are you seeing? So
No, I'm
how
not
sure
seeing,
are
Anthony.
you that this person is okay?
Let me
how
ask you.
sure are you that when you register online, your vote is going to be, placed in the place? And how are you sure that because people who are taking ID numbers and they are not going to register you in a different polling station, when the D-Day for
Anthony,
voting, you will find your voting right has been. Yeah.
Anthony, you're comparing what we are discussing with what is currently happening. And I want to put you in the space that we are discussing. Are the youth,
Yes.
do the youth take their money, do the youth take their money and place a bet with a company?
Because they are sure that.
All right. So they trust digital processes. They will
trust, but in political,
They will place a bet on that.
Politics is totally different.
That is you now who is still stuck on using the old with the new. That's the challenge I'm throwing to you, Anthony. You are still stuck with throwing the old and the new. If the youth are engaged, and they're engaged properly, and they say this is where you find the youth, instead of going to look for the youth in Mtwapa to bring them to Ziwa Langombe, go to Mtwapa and have a conversation with them there. They sit down, they register on their mobile devices. On the day of voting, they vote without having to come and be seen as, that is so and so. Why is he voting for Anthony?
Our IT experts in this country are not going to meddle with this thing in the internet and change the direction. If you are voting
Actually,
in
that's why there's a discussion of the blockchain.
Yeah?
That is why Eric introduced the discussion, the element of the blockchain in this. Because you can have a fail-safe system. You can have a system that guarantees that what you're referring to as interference is minimized to the point of being eliminated completely.
So are you sure that we have reached that standard of digital correctness?
Anthony, we must aspire.
We are already there, actually. I can say that, I'm sure.
But we are aspiring, not perspiring.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for your contributions. Let's hear from John. John, good morning.
Morning, my people. How are you?
Very well,
Very well, thank you.
John, we need to correct our system. So we have you here as John from Elbagon. Now that you moved out of Elbagon, for whatever reason, you made your money, you've come to Nairobi to eat your money. So now you're John of Kilimani.
Now I'm eating my money.
All right.
I'm still trying to think what that proverb means.
It's a
turning
cryptic.
milk.
It's a cryptic one.
Turning water into milk. Huh?
It's cryptic.
It's cryptic.
Reminding me of the first miracle Jesus did. He turned the water into wine. I don't know if it is connected. Now, I hold a very different view. First, I agree that going digital is the way to go. But I hold a different view of the reason why the youth are not registering. To me, it has nothing to do if it is digital or is virtual or physical. It has nothing to do with that. It is something bigger than that. Even if you did electronically, I don't think the youth are just not interested in the politics of the country. That is the bottom line, and it's not just in Kenya alone. I'll give you an example. The just concluded election in South Africa. They are saying it has been the lowest voter turnout since the end of apartheid. And it tells you the reason why people are not interested. People are not seeing politicians giving them solutions to their problems. That is the reason why people are not interested. That's the way people are not registering. And even if they register, I can assure you, voting, they'll register, but the day of the voting, they'll not come and vote.
Why do you think there's no interest?
That's what I'm telling you. People are not seeing that politicians are giving them solutions.
They don't feel the impact of the politician. And that's why I'm saying, John, I completely agree. And my thinking is some of the reasons is because we have a system that the youth do not relate with.
Yes.
So when you talk about holding leaders to account, when you talk about asking the leaders what they are doing and what they ought to do, the youth are in a different platform. The government is in a different platform altogether. The government is in some hut somewhere, grass thatched. The youth are somewhere in a pod,
no, I
going
think
around the world.
No.
If you bring a platform where they start interacting a lot more with the government, where they can even start participating by electing their people, they'll interact a lot more. My thinking is that if you make it, in a place where they are interacting and engaging with the government, they will start feeling the impact of the government. They will start expressing. Right now, they're expressing frustration by not turning up to vote, by not turning up to register as voters. That's expression of a frustration because they know there's government, but they don't feel the government.
Yes, but it's not because of the mode. I think you are concentrating more of the mode. To me, if today you give these youth jobs, if you give them hope, it doesn't matter if they are going to register manually or they are going to register how. They are going to do it. It's not, to me, it's more than the mode that you are using.
But how is that hope?
What the youth need, the hope, give them jobs. Let them see that this government is taking care of their needs.
What you're doing, John, is you're still keeping the youth out of the periphery of leadership and saying those in leadership, however archaic and old thinking they are, they should give them jobs.
Yes.
And I'm saying let the youth participate and get themselves those opportunities.
Actually, the discussion, John, ought to be, first of all, the whole process of politics will engage you. It will influence your life whether you participate or not. And yet, if you participate, you at least have a fighting chance of bringing about change that may benefit you more. But if you have a situation that you consider untenable, and yet your position is one where you've determined that you will not participate, what you've guaranteed is the very position that you're in is going to be entrenched, not reduced.
Let me give you an example.
Yes.
Some of us maybe I've mentioned this before. The first time I voted was in 1992. That's the first multi-party election. And the thing that was giving us hope at that time, we were just joining college, is that there was a very dictatorial government. The economy was run down.
Yep.
But we were seeing an opposition that was giving us hope. They are not even taking power.
Yep.
But we saw an opposition. We saw there are a group of people here who are giving us hope.
Yep.
That's the only thing that made us actually really, really. And at that point, we were not even told that you need to go and vote. You need to go and. It was just voluntary. Actually, we used to mobilize ourselves.
Yes.
Because we were seeing hope.
Yes.
Now, that is the thing that the youth are not seeing in this country.
Hope.
They are not seeing hope. So even if you said now, let them register online, let them vote online, if they are not seeing that hope, I believe
John,
they still not participate.
John, we have a very democratic government.
Yes.
That democratic space is constantly being fought for. It isn't static. The people want to claw back whatever gains we have. Yes. We have a situation where the country, the economy is in some serious doldrums as we speak.
Yes.
You consider just what we pay, 2.9 billion daily is what we pay for the debts that we have daily.
Yes.
3 or 4 times more than anything we put in development, 3 or 4 times more than anything that is given to the counties. That's our situation. It is far worse than 1992, infinitely worse off. Now, tell me, if you really want to bring about change, and you know change comes about by the sort of leaders you choose, should this not be more than any other time, a time when the youth ought to galvanize themselves to actually consider that this thing that they actually have, the numbers and the vote, should this not be the time when they rethink and say, actually, if we stop being depressed about this situation and consider what we have, and they have the numbers and they have the power, can they not bring about this change that they need?
They will.
They can and they will. The difference between the situation you are bringing now and then is that time there were leaders who were giving us that hope.
Perfect. I want to ride on that now. 1992, okay?
Yes.
There was a group of leaders who felt, just like the rest of the country, who felt that things are not going right.
Yes.
They looked for a platform outside of what was present to agitate. What platform was this? The streets.
Yes.
Right? To agitate. And from the streets, they recruited people like John and others who had the opportunity to be able to go to a polling center, and they had an ID and they voted.
Voted, yes.
Today, there are young people and a crop of leaders who are feeling dissatisfied with the system.
Yes.
Where are they? On the streets called Twitter.
Can I cut you short a bit? You know, I have had that argument before.
And
those people that you are talking about the Twitter, what is the percentage of the youth who are in Twitter?
Just the same percentage of the youth who were in university in 1992. It's the same kind of thing.
Who were
Look,
dissatisfied
John,
with the status
I
quo
can
at
tell
the
you
time.
for sure. I can tell you for sure. Just because you participated by voting in 1992, very many of your age mates did not vote in 1992.
But majority did.
Majority gani?
Majority did.
Majority gani? Majority gani? Majority of the people who were in between the age of 18 and 25 in 1992 got access to ID and went and voted across the country.
Did. Yes, majority did.
Higher here. Let's go on.
Let me ask Muga.
So your contention is that there's a minority who are active on social media.
That is the minority.
Who are making noise. There was a very small minority of five or so gentlemen on the streets of Nairobi who were leading people. There was a silent majority who then turned up to vote. Seeing my point?
I get your point.
Yes.
You know, John has a point because the voter turnout in 1992 was actually 69.4%.
Of those that had registered to vote.
Yes, it was high.
What percentage of the population was
this is
it?
the thing, that what can that voice catalyze where you find a lot of people, or even if it is a small number of people, making an impact in terms of noise and agitation, who will it then impact? Whether they're salient listenership or viewership. Who will it impact moving forward? The 69% of people who voted, or even 50% of those who voted, were not necessarily all of those who went onto the streets in 1992 agitating for change. No. But it was catalytic in nature that it will affect a number of people. So they're saying there are people who are operating within those spaces, maybe not as loud, but they're within those spaces. So why not target them where they are?
Yes.
Even if you target them, I can let me give you. I say I'm going to give I'll ask Muga this because Muga, I have heard him severally say he goes somewhere where his umbilical cord was buried. If you go to where your umbilical cord was buried, Mr. Muga, in that village, and you get the youth around there, how many of them are on Twitter? How many of them are on Facebook?
Anecdotally speaking, if they are not on Twitter, it's because they can't afford a gadget that would let them tweet. But they all aspire to tweet.
And they know about
Twitter. And they know about Twitter.
And they have a Twitter account.
They do. Even, I'm answering your question. I have seen young people sharing phones. Meaning somebody has a phone, somebody has a SIM card. And they will insert their SIM card on that phone to be able to communicate as they see fit.
Let me give you another example, John, of something that actually shocked me. I met a girl whose shadow has never darkened the boundary of Nairobi.
Yes.
2021, right? In the village, you would think that she went to school in the village. Everything about her was in the village. She finished high school last year, right? One of the first things that she did was post a picture of herself posing in a certain manner. Where? On social media. You would think that because she went to school in rural Kenya, that she had no idea of the social media movement. but they know. They are aware of what is happening. People speak. This thing has spread like wildfire. You'll be surprised. You will be surprised that people know. It's just that they have not, that opportunity and knowledge have not had an opportunity to meet.
And they engage. It doesn't
But
mean
they
that
engage.
because they engage on digital platforms.
They engage.
I agree.
Talk
I agree.
about a clip going viral, and you go to any part of this country, they'll tell you,
You'll find it.
so
They
and
saw
so
it.
said it. Even if they don't have a phone, they've seen it. Now, when you talk about making it digital, we are not saying that everybody has to be on Twitter for this thing to work. It's
No.
digital. M-Pesa did not say everybody has to be on Twitter or Facebook for it to work, but people use M-Pesa. It's digital. The newest phones that are being bought, for every phone that's being bought in the country nowadays, it's a smartphone. So
Eric, you are telling me if today the IBC say that the people should register online, we are going to see 6.5 million people register?
not necessarily if you did it today,
but
it's going to net a lot more people.
I don't think so.
But John, let me ask you.
Are you saying that people are not registering because they don't know? The last 1 week.
It's about convenience.
John, one of the reasons why people are not registering, we've heard from people who've tried to register, it's cumbersome.
Yes.
It's cumbersome. You are told to go and see who visit, who go, where.
No. Those are very few people.
There are bank managers, John, who a couple of years ago, when some young people were coming and starting to work for banks and saying, you know what, let's put our services online. Some bank managers says, look at the portfolio of our clients, the account holders. Which of these people is going to even understand how to transact online? Today, how many people are transacting online, including John?
No. I agree.
Can count the people who go to the banking hall.
It starts somewhere. The fact of the matter is that a majority of Kenyans are the youth.
Yes.
The second fact of the matter is that a vast majority of this youth have access and they know how to engage on digital platforms.
They have access, yes.
And the other fact of the matter is that digital, if managed well, provides convenience and efficiency. One of the reasons why IEBC in the Elections Act talked about using electronic mode for transmission is because of trust and efficiency. Same. So let's deploy all these things and say, you know what?
I agree, Eric. Let me give you another example.
John is agreeing to
the
disagree.
U.S. election.
Anyway, go on, John.
the last U.S. election.
Yes.
Even Obama time. The most important thing that every person was running was that we want the youth to turn out and vote. You can. What I'm trying to say, even in those so developed countries, they still have that problem of having the youth to come and vote.
Actually, in Obama's time, the youth did vote. In fact, what was unique, there were people who were campaigning for Obama who had not even reached the voting age. And when they asked, they said, I don't have to be of the voting age. What I need is to participate because this is where I think I will benefit in the future.
Yes.
And what did Obama deploy that others had not deployed before him? Technology. Digital.
Yes. And the impossible happened. And the whole world witnessed it. And then he did it again.
Yes.
Well, just agree the final.
I agree, Eric. But I still insist. The youth that we have is not about digital. We need to go deeper and find out why they are not interested. It is. If you say digital, I think
they are interested.
And then why not coming to
wrong
register?
platform?
No. I don't buy that. I don't buy that, Eric.
So,
good day.
Good day. 12 minutes to 10. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. So, Ndu will tell us shortly how the roads are looking like now. Is it off traffic hour?
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
He's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Afande hii umbo yako iko na
hii ni umba special.
Still continues crazily, folks. We're looking at that whole Landis Road section coming off of Lusaka specifically, going towards Landis. Very, very packed and still not off traffic hour just yet. Uhuru Highway also continues to be a thing, and that's inbound the city. That South Sea area, looking at getting in from there, also very, very slow. Langata Road, that whole area, still in traffic hour. Looks like it's going to be there for about an hour more or so. And then coming off Pangani, also a little bit of traffic there. Other than that, everybody seems to have gotten where they're going and probably will not pick up until later on in the day, but we'll be here to let you know what it looks like. SpiceFM KE on Twitter through the day. Text on 40127.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
All right,
Spice FM, Nairobi.
Conversation continues. Should voting go digital in Kenya? Register on digital, vote on digital. Would it be able to then attract more youth to participate, either to participate as a voter, to participate as a contestant, or even to engage long after? We talk about that holding leaders to account, and we say, so after you've voted for them, how come we don't engage them? Where are we supposed to engage with our leaders? Where are you supposed to engage with your MCA? When they attend your meeting and then you start shouting at them and telling them this and the other? Do we have those platforms that engage with the leaders? Let's go back to the phone lines and pick two more calls. Aaron in Isli, good morning.
Good morning to Eric.
How are you doing?
I am well.
Good.
Well, I agree with some of the things you say, especially concerning the platform.
Mm-hmm.
When you say about maybe the systems of the government like IBC going online, well, that could be correct and that could work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's why the youths are not really concerned. As a youth myself, I voted in the last election. But I don't think I'm in that position to be willing to go through the same process once again.
Why?
Because there is no change. The politicians have learned some art they usually do. When you say that there are Kenyans on Twitter and that it's a powerful platform, you remember our president is not on Twitter.
Exactly.
He said, hapo ni pahali pa makelele pekee na matusi. So most of these leaders, they are not there. They just know how Kenyans react, how youths react. They will just make noise. They will just make insults. But then nothing will change.
Let me ask you, Aaron.
Their system is airtight.
Yeah.
Such that we will make noise. The other day, the Kenyans on Twitter were complaining about the loans.
Yes.
World Bank, they still give us the money. There is nothing that's changed on that front. So I think when you usually push someone to a certain corner, they get tired of pushing back. and they focus on their lives. You know, one
Let me ask you,
reason
Aaron.
I'm saying this.
Allow me to ask you this question. Since you voted in 2017,
yes,
have you engaged with any of the people you voted for? From MCA to the president, have you engaged them?
this is the issue. Once I voted them in, there is no a platform where you will meet them again until the next election.
Right.
I will make as much noise as I want online.
Right.
I'll mobilize as many people as I want. Of course, the only option I know you're going to tell me about is voting them out.
No, I'm
But
not
then
going,
you
I'm not going to give you that option. I'm going to give you the option that because the politician knows that at present, the platform that you are trying to engage them on does not count.
Yes.
They will ignore you from that platform. But what if we made that platform count?
Yes, that is one way to go about it.
What if we made it? And that's why I said, if we said voting is digital, and we went ahead and actualized what the law says and what the Constitution says, that public participation shall also be digital.
Yes.
That even in public participation in terms of making laws and all shall be digital, then this becomes a very, very important platform even for those in leadership.
Yes, but is there any willpower for the same to happen?
That's
That's
another question.
That's where the agitation forces the willpower.
Yes, but that's why I said I agree partly with that.
Okay.
But you know, I have a phone, and I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on every platform. But someone might be thinking that all the youths are just online, just typing. But the issue is we got tired. You go and find some mjengo somewhere and do your work. Find a few minutes, you tweet and go back to your work. So I don't have even enough time to visit the poll desk. I just go on with my life. I just see the government, how they are doing their things. I know I will make noise and nothing will change. But then I just focus on something, an alternative to just bring bread on my table. As a young person.
You know, the fact that we're even having this discussion tells me that something has happened. So it isn't as though what you're calling noise is for nothing. You know, with every change that one sees or one has experienced or history has penned down for us, it has to start somewhere, my friend. And you will be fatigued. You will feel it isn't worth it. Take a break when you feel fatigued. Let air get into it. Take a breather and then start again.
Go on. What you've actually done this morning, Aaron, is you validated what we are saying. That the youth are engaged. And they are engaged in other spaces. The politician will look, and others will look and say, because Aaron has not turned up at a social hall in Isli when the MCA was having a meeting, Aaron is not engaged. But you're saying Aaron is engaged.
He's engaged.
Well,
yes,
I could agree, but what's more important even than going online is having a platform of accountability. Because when you elect these leaders, even if online is powerful, it is not the right platform to hold them to account, to ask them any questions. Still on the ground, there is no platform yet to hold them to account until they come back to us to ask for votes. So we need to have a balance in the two, so that at least when we are engaging the youth, we know it's something that will count, something that will work. But I get your point. I agree.
I agree with that as well, because there must be something then upon which it can lean on. To say that, you know what, we're comfortable in this space because we know regardless of what will happen, that whether we're here in this digital space, regardless of what will happen, the system is so strong that we know, we're safe doing it here. It's just the way people have diaspora voting or that early voting, for example, because, I voted early. I know it's going to count because the system is so strong.
When we say let's go digital, we are actually saying let's develop those systems on the digital platforms. When we say that we're going to have accountability systems on digital, it means that they will count. That in the end of the day, if a committee in the National Assembly, a committee on roads was discussing an issue about roads and they go to Parliament, one of the requirements is, so how many people engaged with this conversation on digital platforms? Is the platform there? It is there. Is the platform now being considered? It now becomes considered. It's in the Constitution. All we need to do is enact legislation to empower it. That's my final point on it. City.
Wakusha Mbombe ikaoka mawe. You have shaken the water until it has become milk. Now, the perspective you gave about that which appears to be impossible becoming possible, a very interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing about proverbs and things about sayings, they were not always cryptic. Some of them were in the form of questions. Some were in the form of just what you may call an obvious statement. But there was a reason behind it for you to summarize something that you think is profound in just a few words to say it. So, let me wish the two of you a good morning. And please, shake the water until it becomes milk.
Voila.
Keep doing it.
Keep doing it.
Pray until something happens.
Yes.
Take action until you see change.
Yes.
Shake water until it becomes milk.
Yes.
Thank you very much for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We'll be here. Have a lovely Wednesday. It's now 10 a.m.